All right. Good evening, everyone. Hello. Hello. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the January Sierra Club dinner. It's really wonderful to see such a great turnout. And the first thing I want to start off.
If you hold the mic in your hand.
Oh, if I hold it, that'll be better?
And put it up there.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Thank you for that feedback. Appreciate
We're all old and hard of hearing.
No, gotcha. Thank you so much. So before I introduced our esteemed and personal friend of mine, speaker this evening, Michael Gosney, I just have a few housekeeping items to go over. The first of which is I owe you all an apology, and specifically you, ma'am, and others who were affected by the fact that the last dinner was unfortunately canceled because we had too few attendants. And I'll talk about kind of some of the root problems there in a minute. But what happened was we tried to reach everyone that we could. We didn't have everyone's contact information. So as a backup plan, we were to have a sign posted on the door, and the ball got dropped there. It's ultimately my responsibility. So it is me who screwed up there. And I apologize to all of you who were affected by that. No one's checks were cashed who sent in money. And what we actually had was an alternative venue, which was Arcology restaurant, where we had a small group discussion. Everyone was invited to free of charge. But of course, the message didn't get across. But so let me talk about the solution to that. There's one solution, which is the sign-up sheet, which Melissa, would you be good enough to raise your hand? So Melissa, my girlfriend, my partner, she's been circulating a sign-up sheet so we can get start to build a database of contacts, which we don't really have, so that in the future we can communicate with you all through that medium. One of the root problems, why did we have such low sign-ups for December? It was the 5th of 5 dinners that we had somehow directly related to climate change. And I think we burned out, I take responsibility for that too, a lot of our audience on too much climate change. And I am convinced that that's an extremely important topic, but the big learning from that and the popularity of tonight's talk, Michael Gosney's, is that we're no longer focusing on the problem itself. We all know about the problem. Let's focus on solutions. Thank you. Thank you. So going forward, the Sierra Club dinners are going to be, we're going to try to strike that balance between beautiful travel logs and adventures and, beautiful ecosystems and whatnot on the one hand, kind of more traditional Sierra Club dinners, and Sierra Club dinners such as this one on Arcologies, where we're looking at groundbreaking planetary scale solutions, short-term, medium-term, long-term, that get to the root problems. So more on that in a moment. And I appreciate everyone's feedback and input on what you would like to see in an upcoming Sierra Club dinner. So please come to me after the presentation. We can talk about that. So tonight, the schedule will be, after I shut up, I'll introduce Michael Gosney. He'll give about an hour-long presentation, including some Q&A. And then at around 9 o'clock, or a couple minutes after, we will break, but only for 15 minutes. So those of you who need to get going home at that time can do so. And, but then after that, at about 9:15, we're going to reconvene for like a big circle roundtable discussion about all these topics related to Arcologies, other solutions to climate change, and how Arcologies really play a key role. Because as you'll see, it's a multifaceted topic. I also wanted to mention, so please prepare to stick around if you'd like to. Everyone's welcome to stay for the roundtable conversation. We're recording the presentation and the after presentation discussion. So if you want to participate in that and you don't want to be on camera, we'll have a special section for people who don't want to be on camera. Fair enough? Yeah. Okay, good. Other housekeeping items. wanted to mention that at the table in the back there, Michael Gosney has kindly provided a bunch of books and resources pertaining to Arcologies. So feel free to have a look there. And also Joanne Drabeck, if you'll raise your hand, Joanne also has Sierra Club calendars for sale at a discount. So see Joanne about calendars. I want to mention, let me take a deep breath. Whew.
Doing great.
Yeah. Thank you, thank you. And actually, on that note, I want to mention that I need help. We need help. The Sierra Club dinners are a wonderful, wonderful venue, as y'all know. My dad was program chair going back to the 70s. Jane was program chair for a number of years. Jane and Morton and Anna have helped out tremendously, but we need help, we as a group. Joanne as well, too many to mention, but we kind of distribute the load of all this amongst all of us. Many hands make heavy work light. So if you're interested in volunteering, please check that on the sign-up sheet that Melissa has circulated and will continue to circulate. So please sign up, number one, mainly just so we can contact you. Forget about being a volunteer. If you want to volunteer, that's optional. So, but please sign up regardless. And yeah, so Melissa's got the sheet, but there'll be time after the presentation as well. So, but please sign up on the sheet before you leave. I want to mention the upcoming dinners on February 28th. We'll have a presentation on the Philippines, land of my grandmother's birth, my father's mother. Don Lowry and Jackie Minor took an amazing trip there, amazing photography. So that's on February 28th. And then on March 28th, Susan and Ralph Acorn will do a beautiful presentation on Camino de Santiago in northern Spain. And they're going to cover two of the less traveled but older routes. There's a number of, there isn't just one Camino, there's multiple paths on the Camino de Santiago. So they're going to be covering two of the less traveled, more northern routes, the Norte and Primitivo. The April dinner is still TBD, and then on May 23rd, what we're going to have visiting Professor Lucia Garces Loman from Brazil, who's a conservation biologist from Brazil. She'll be doing a beautiful presentation on the Amazon, the flora and fauna of the Amazon, and a lot of the science, history, and art, covering the lost art of scientific artwork. Now, in the after presentation discussion, we're going to go deeper into kind of the broader context within which Michael Gosney's work exists, which is a term Michael taught me, which is solutionaries. Now, I want to acknowledge there's many of you in this room are solutionaries and who work on different facets of our world problems and different solutions to them. So we're going to be covering a number of those. For example, my partner Melissa is one of a group of leaders in the Pacific Northwest where we live, working on saving the whales who are at risk of extinction as part of our planetary crisis. We'll talk about different strategies for cooling the planet, for ending hunger, and kind of meta solution of collective intelligence as a platform, a planetary community, forming a collective intelligence so that together we can co-create solutions. That's actually an integral part of Arcologies, so everything overlaps. So at the after presentation discussion, we'll have an opportunity for everyone to go around the circle, and you can talk about what areas or what projects or initiatives you've been working on. So everyone will have an opportunity there. So I really encourage everyone to stick around after the intermission for the discussion. So I'm very happy to introduce, by way of, just give me one more minute so I can properly introduce Michael, who has been a colleague of mine for the last couple of years. We worked together on a number of holistic solutions, including Arcologies, including collective intelligence, and a number of different projects. So the origin of Michael's work in Arcologies goes way back to probably the 80s, early 90s for sure. Michael worked with world famous Arcology pioneer Paolo Soleri, who pioneered Arcosanti. Michael was on the board of both Arcosanti and Biosphere 2, and has also been a co-producer with Paolo Soleri of the Paradox conferences in the late 90s on Arcologies. Michael really thinks broadly and deeply and has collaborated with numerous different intentional communities around the world, of which Arcologies are an example, a very special case of those, which are designed to get to the roots of many of the world's problems. It's just a whole new paradigm. So Michael will talk about kind of both the gradual evolution of Arcologies going from cities in their current state, however dysfunctional, evolving, kind of like a transformation of a caterpillar to a butterfly. So that sort of gradual evolution from current cities in situ all the way to blank slate design and creation of whole new Arcologies from, farmland, for example. So anyway, again, please stick around for the afternoon discussion, and please give a warm welcome, my buddy, Michael Gosney.
All right.
You want to speak
Wow.
right in there?
Okay. Wonderful to see so many great people here tonight, and really nice, diverse mix of environmentally conscious beings. Really want to thank Jamin and the Sierra Club for this opportunity, and I do want to acknowledge Jamin's role in inspiring me to really, for me, it's a little bit of a revisiting of these subjects. But as I will share with you, I've been kind of on this trail for many years. I will say that I'm not a practicing professional or true expert in sustainable urban design, but I've been interested in this really for most of my life, since I went out to Arizona State and first encountered Paolo Soleri's work. So just to say kind of who I am, why I'm standing up here talking about this subject. My affiliations, I am involved with we have a nonprofit that is under the Buckminster Fuller Institute, and our focus is on online platforms for collaboration and community. And I also, I was not on the board of Biosphere 2. However, I work very closely with the crew that developed Biosphere 2, John Allen and his wife, Deborah Perry Snyder, who is the publisher of Synergetic Press. And we publish books on biospheric science and consciousness. So I'm currently very engaged with a publishing house based out in Santa Fe. I also was on the board of the Ecocities Foundation through the 90s. I originally connected with Paolo and company, working on one of the early book projects with them. In fact, it's one of the small little books in the back called Arcology, an Urban Laboratory. I also, in the early 2000s, and this is where this Califia concept came together, I formed with my colleagues, Mark Caskey, who's here tonight, and I'll ask Mark to say a few words later, and Henry Dakin, a wonderful gentleman here in San Francisco, a philanthropist who supported many progressive ventures. We formed the Green Century Institute as a clearinghouse for sustainable communities, so we had a focus on that for about 5 years and convened many salons, we did gather a group researching this proposal for a Northern California model arcology, and we called it Califia. So I'm going to start with kind of the big picture and the inspiration of our Arcology. This is the book that was published by MIT Press in 1971, and it was in many ways a shot heard around the world. It includes about 30 different arcology concepts, ranging from smaller sized projects housing 10,000 people up to huge conceptions of these ecologically designed cities for even as many as 500,000. And the book also has a great deal of information on Soleri's philosophy and the methodology that he proposes called Arcology, architecture ecology. It inspired architects, needless to say, around the world and urban designers, but also, as I discovered over the years, Soleri's work has inspired creative people in all professions. Really been amazing, the influence that he's had. On the other hand, his work has remained relatively unrecognized by the broader culture because, in part, like so many visionary efforts, our mainstream culture tends to marginalize anything it can't absorb. So, Arcology is, simply put, the integration of architecture and ecology. These 3 points here are the way the Gosney Foundation defines it. It's a methodology to shape urban landscapes that are dense, integrated, walkable, and three-dimensional. And it's very much about a way that we can support the complex activities of our culture and fulfill the human spirit while keeping our civilization, our infrastructure in harmony with the natural world. So the key concepts of Arcology, there's a lot to it, but these are 3 kind of critical areas. The concept of the urban effect, which, as Soleri observes, occurs all through nature. When organisms gather, and there's usually some form of a container that's facilitating their gathering, that's where synergy occurs, that's where evolution occurs. And Soleri also really kind of anticipated the whole complexity theory paradigm, recognizing that complex systems evolve through increasingly miniaturized systems of form and through over time. So more complex systems, more miniaturized and compact. And finally, the city being recognized throughout human history as a container for human evolution. And in Soleri's view, he sees an integration with natural principles for our huge requirement for human habitat to be an opportunity to take the container to the next level, encouraging a more positive human evolution. So a little bit about Soleri. He's Italian. He was born in Turin, Italy. Did some architectural projects over there, but he came out to Taliesin West, studied with Frank Lloyd Wright, got kicked out of Taliesin West, and formed his own compound in Scottsdale called the Gosney Foundation, where he did some of his early design work, prototyping different kinds of architectural forms and creating a showcase for his work. He then got together with his wife, Kali, and raised money through their family connections and purchased the land 60 miles north of Phoenix, where Arcology, as a prototype Arcology, was begun. That was in around 1970. So Soleri's primary influences, other than Frank Lloyd Wright and his green architectural sensibility, was also very much the vision of Teilhard de Chardin, the Jesuit priest who was also a paleontologist, who many of you may have read his work, his advanced concepts of human evolution. And so, by the way, Soleri considers his philosophical work to be as valuable as his design work. He always eschewed the academic direction for his work, and in some ways that's why his legacy maybe isn't as strong as it could be in the philosophy circle. But I believe that he, in his writings, there's still a lot for him to contribute. For one thing, it's very evident when you look at right now his body of work that he definitely anticipated biomimicry, complexity theory, conscious evolution. And even in the 90s, when we were working together on the Paradox conferences, the potential of cyberspace. One thing that he predicted when in the late 90s, we were first seeing the emergence of e-commerce and Amazon and so forth. He was concerned that the already harmful paradigm of single-family homes and a car-driven society, with the idea of shipping goods to your home, was going to create what he called a global hermitage of isolated humans out of touch with each other. So Arcosanti was founded in 1970, concept being a model arcology for 3,000 plus residents, with about 3,000 acres, on which the actual Arcology complex would take only about 10 acres, 10 or 20 acres. Currently, it serves as a Solari archive and has an ongoing function as what Solari like to call an urban laboratory. They hold 6-week workshops every year. They've had 8,000 participants over a couple of decades from all over the world. And it's a very well-visited Arizona tourist site. They give tours every day. They get 40,000 a year through there. It also serves as an event venue. They have concerts on a regular basis, local community coming up from Phoenix. The Forum Festival is a larger electronic music festival that's been going on for the last 5 years there. And this past year, they had the group at Arcosani had the second Convergence Festival, which I was delighted to join back in October. And it was a delight for me being out at Arcosani. I hadn't been there in a while, and the Convergence Festival is very much reminiscent of the Paradox conferences we did in the late 90s and 2001. Permanent population of Arcosani is relatively small, but the community associated with the project around the world is actually quite substantial. Let's see here. So those buildings that the previous slide showed, they like to call Old Town, assuming that the rest of the project is built. And you can see in these models, the smaller structures are the existing structures, and these are different versions of a completed Arcosani. Those are stepped greenhouse gardens, an apron of gardens there. You see the use of the what are called apps, the quarter sphere structures that, when positioned properly in the summer, it casts shade. In the winter, the light goes into the quarter sphere and heats. That's an example of the archaeological design features. There's many just passive design features that are quite significant. So Arcosani aspires to be a full Arcology model. It's considered 500 residents is considered a critical mass to have just a small functioning Arcology, and that's been the goal of Arcosani, to ramp it up to at least 500 residents. But as it's been over the years, Arcosani is part of what's, more of the eco-village movement, which I will review, because the whole history and current activities of the eco-village movement is very relative to the kind of new paradigm, larger eco-cities that we need to see happening. And so Arcology remains an unrealized methodology, but in the meantime, Solari Larry's work was directly responsible for inspiring what's known as the Ecocity movement around the world. And so the Ecocity designation is much broader in the application of what that means, what the definition of an Ecocity is, versus the much more strictly defined methodology of Arcology. Simply put, an Ecocity is an ecologically healthy city. Richard Register was associated with and interested in Solari's work, and I met him many years ago in the late 70s. And he went on to form Ecocity Builders in Berkeley, which has done a lot of work with just local projects, greening cities in different ways. But they also launched many years ago the Ecocity World Summit, which is held in different cities around the world. And the upcoming event is going to be in Vancouver this year in October. And by the way, this presentation gets to be kind of information intense in some places. There's lots of URLs. I encourage you to jot them down. But also later when we have the talk, I can call some of these screens back up. So this slide goes through, you know, some of the various applications of Ecocity design, and the sustainable urbanism movement is becoming really more of a mainstream trend. Most of the serious activities going on in Asia. But these are not wholly new cities for the most part. It's infill development in existing cities. And this is perhaps the most important thing that we do, is that we, you know, as the next line indicates, we integrate regenerative systems by adding to and retrofitting existing infrastructures. But all of that kind of activity can learn from, you know, the ideal of a fully regenerative Arcology project. That's why, you know, the mission to design radical models is so important, because such efforts pull other initiatives along. So we have, you know, the LEED certification, which you may have heard of, which has been defining, the U.S. Green Building Council defining green buildings, has been gradually over the past several years establishing LEED for cities. And Savona, Italy is the first LEED certified city over in Europe. The GBCI is the group that does the certification, and they do certification for a number of different green standards, not just LEED. I'm sorry?
He's asking if you skipped a slide.
Did I? Yes, remind me if I do. Yes, I'm so sorry. That's the... Okay, so that's what I've just been talking through. I'm referring to my on my iPad here. All right, so Ecocity buildings, suburban urbanism, LEED for cities. And finally, I was just mentioning the transition town movement, which has been kind of an organic movement around the world. But there's a UK nonprofit called the Transition Network that has started to connect the different transition town groups around the world. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of activity in Asia, and these are large, well-planned infill developments that incorporate, you know, a lot of great new design ideas and technologies. And this is an example of a huge outfit based in Singapore, Capcorp, one of their projects. All of these websites that I cited here are full of inspiring examples. What's really encouraging is over the past 10 years, there's been a lot of wonderful developments in kind of what you might call eco-technology, kind of technologies that can be incorporated into large-scale new cities. And one of the great examples of that is the work of Michael Pollan with his exploration architecture firm. These are some energy solutions that are meant to be part of a integrated city design. This is another example of their work, a biomimetic office building. Yeah, I'm sorry about the slides. usage of energy. This is the biomimetic office building.
They're beautiful slides, Michael. What do you
Well,
apologize?
yeah, I just need to remember to click the clicker.
You want someone to do it for you?
No, I'm good. So, and then there's some, a lot of big ideas, and I just need to say this, big ideas being floated. The Seasteading Institute, which is in part basically right here in Berkeley, has been developing plans for a floating city, and they actually have this underway in French Polynesia. Really worth checking out. Very, very exciting work they're doing. And on the right is Vincent Califia architecture. They're in Paris, and I'll tell you what, their website is just full of incredible, exciting concepts. This is the next generation of solarities. We have them. Things are going on. So the eco-city movement, as I just expressed, is a diverse, wide-ranging movement toward greening communities, whether they be large cities or smaller towns. And that's very important that movement continue and expand. But when we look at the ideas for dramatic model projects such as the Califia, we have a lot to learn from the eco-village movement, which is really more associated with what you would call the intentional community movement. And the definition, I'll go ahead and read this as it's described on the Global Eco-Village Network site. An eco-village is an intentional, traditional, or urban community that is consciously designed through locally owned participatory processes in all four dimensions of sustainability: social, culture, ecology, and economy, to regenerate social and natural environments. And the eco-village movement incorporates a number of different movements within it, as listed here: permaculture, the transition town movement, placemaking movement, conscious festivals, regenerative agriculture, community currency, conscious capitalism, holistic health, sustainability applied to communities, and environmental activism. So here's some resources. The Global Eco-Village Network is divided into regional groups worldwide. There's several thousand members. Next Gena is the...
Is that a new slide?
Oh yeah, thank you. There we go. Next Gena is the younger generation arm of the Global Eco-Village Network, and very active here in the US.
Are those all eco-villages that exist right now?
Say again?
Are those all eco-villages that exist right now?
Yes, those are, that's the map off of the Global Eco-Village Network, and those indicate 4 eco-villages there, 134 there, etc. And so there's another wonderful resource, in fact, in some ways more broadly applicable to mainstream society, is the work of the Fellowship for Intentional Community. They're based actually back in Missouri, in rural Missouri, but they're influential all over the world, and they publish the Communities magazine. A couple of copies of that are out on the table in back. And so the eco-village movement is very diverse. There's thousands of projects around the world, but most of those are much more modest, privately owned efforts for 10 to 50 people. But there has emerged over the years a number of iconic model communities. One of the most visible is Oroville in Pondicherry, southern India. This project was begun through the inspiration of the great Indian sage Aurobindo and his partner, known as the Mother, who was a French woman who joined him later in his life and really was a remarkable figure. They were in Pondicherry there in southern India, and Auroville was developed after Aurobindo's death, but the Mother was really the champion and made it happen. And around Auroville, she's kind of considered the patron saint, so to speak. They did a tremendous restoration job, really taking some land that was completely depleted and did remarkable restoration, planting 2 million trees and improving the watershed and making it a virtual paradise. The house there on the lower right is an example of any number of beautiful architectural designs that have been employed in the residences there. I really recommend all these examples I'm showing that you check out their websites and you can see what all they have going on. Next is Damanhur. This is a project built in northern Italy. Now, both of these projects have a kind of a spiritual community basis, and that's been kind of common in the intentional community world because it's very often the case that a spiritual community wants to have a new kind of community experience. And, so Damanhur in northern Italy is in fact a modern mystery school, and they began with very advanced healing practices and also have some very advanced sustainable development components. And like a lot of these projects, they all have different emphases, but there's many different solutions that have emerged. An example from Damanhur would be their nucleos. They have about 200 people living in the central compound, but the rest of the 800-person community live in nucleos, which are residential houses that have been purchased in the neighboring town outside of Turin. They're north of Turin, but there's some smaller towns around there that have actually had depressed real estate values. So they bought these houses and their own crews went in and retrofitted them so that they could house 15 to 20 people, adding bedrooms and larger kitchens and so forth. And the nucleos all have kind of a balance of age groups, and some of them have businesses within them, and they all share resources. So the nucleo concept, I think, is really brilliant, and it's been kind of cool to see over the past 10 years the emergence of kind of a similar concept that we see going on in the cities, where the people are sharing resources in a network of rented homes. And current community currency at Damanhur that's been very effective. They've had a lot of healing and massage and other kinds of practices, agriculture, and so they exchange goods and services within the community using their own currency. And that's the whole concept of the community currency, coupled with the evolving blockchain cryptocurrency opportunities, has a lot, I think, to play as we go forward with these kinds of communities. Tamara's over in Portugal. And by the way, there's ties to San Francisco from all of these. It shares its origin with the California Institute of Integral Studies here in San Francisco. There's a deep connection between the two. And Damanhur, the folks from Damanhur have been in San Francisco quite a bit, giving workshops and things. And likewise, Tamara, Ben Mendelsohn, and others have been here doing workshops. And so there's a lot of, because San Francisco, it's a very advanced place for evolutionary initiatives. And so it's not surprising that these projects around the world reach out to us and vice versa. But they are models, but they're also very focused on the bioregional, we call it the biotope, the more local part of the bioregion. And we've done a lot of great research there, and a lot of outreach and a lot of education. You know, Findhorn is another community. I should mention Findhorn, a very strong force behind the Global Eco-Village Network in Scotland. And the Gaia Education extension of Findhorn is doing a lot to spread this knowledge and bring people together around the world. So, Regen Villages is an example of some of the newer efforts that are going on. And unfortunately, James Ehrlich, who heads up this initiative, he's in Stanford, he couldn't join us here tonight. But they are developing a project in the Netherlands, and it's really meant to be very much a pilot, a model, but they have a whole system in place to create a replicable model, and a lot of IT infrastructure. It's taking the smart city concept to a whole new level. They call it the Village OS, and their website is quite informative. I would encourage you to check out regenvillages.com. And they're looking at projects in Europe and Asia, as well as the US. But the Netherlands project is actually pretty far along. So I wanted to just kind of give that overview of where things are at with Arcology, Ecocities, and the very lively movement of eco-villages worldwide. But now let's talk about this notion of Califia. And I'm going to start with a little history of the concept. But certainly the name, many of you may know that Califia is the namesake of the Californias, and it's named after a mythical Amazon goddess. And that's a mural in the Mark Hopkins Hotel. So I'm going to go through real quick a little history of this idea, and it's partly kind of my history too. I was in San Diego for many years, and after having been out at Arizona State when I first encountered Solari, and you know, I learned about Solari in a wonderful introduction to architecture class that began with the pyramids and it ended with arcology. And so I was like, okay, arcology is the way the world was going. I thought naively at the time. But it did get me quite inspired. And so I did visit Arcosani quite a number of times after attending the university there in '73. And I got involved in the '80s with the organization by publishing the book that I mentioned earlier, Arcosani, an Urban Laboratory. But to be honest, I had forgotten about this until I started thinking about this presentation. But it really began back in the early '90s when I did have Paolo Solari out to speak at an event in San Diego to the American Institute of Architects, and also had the director of the environmental laboratories that was designing a lot of the Biosphere 2 project. And that event brought me in contact with a number of smart city enthusiasts in San Diego. And back then there was a lot of aspiration for San Diego to be a model smart city. And in fact, it is today. San Diego is one of the leading technological smart cities in the world. But I proposed back then a model eco-city project to be built on the border of the U.S. and Mexico, San Diego collaboration. And people were very excited about that. And it didn't get super far, but there was a few meetings and a lot of exciting exchange about that. And that's really where the seed idea came. But when we produced the Paradox conferences at Arcology in 97, 99, and 2001, I was bringing leaders from the technology world out there. I have been for many years producing the digital be-in here in San Francisco. And so the whole concept of the Paradox conferences was to get the technology sector and the early sustainability leaders together. And they were wonderful events out there. And in part, they satisfied my urge to bring my friends out to Arcology and have a great party after having gone out there for so many years thinking, this place is fabulous. I want to share this with my friends. Well, we had wonderful events. And but what I noticed was so many of the attendees, speakers, so much energy was coming from the Bay Area. I decided that it was important for us to kind of focus this subject in the Bay Area. And so, as I mentioned earlier, Mark Caskey and Henry Dakin and I formed the Green Century Institute and did a number of events. We produced the World Environment Day, which was held in San Francisco. That's held in different cities around the world. In 2005, we did the Green Cities exhibit. A group of people together, a number of really enthusiastic, smart folks. It kind of led up to a symposium that we had at CIIS in 2006, boiled down the ideas. And and I kind of echoed this idea in the digital be-in events in 06, 07, and 08 that were themed Planet Code, Biomimicry, and Ecocity. And we had Paolo Soleri in town for which happened to be in San Francisco that year as well. And that was a great opportunity to expose these ideas to our technology community. So the upshot at that time, back in 2006, Califia, a world-class real estate development and model eco-city with a variety of residential housing configurations and a full complement of civic, retail, and commercial spaces. Leading-edge green architectural design, advanced energy and information systems, new generation of social frameworks and civic organizations to encourage the healthy and ecologically sustainable lifestyle. Importantly, draw upon the unique high-yield resources of the San Francisco region with its evolutionary technology and environmental and social innovations. Involve many of the world's top sustainable design researchers, entrepreneurs, and institutions. And in sum, to bring the fruits of California's amazing, diverse, world-changing culture into a high-visibility, concrete living model for a new urban lifestyle.
Beautiful.
So that's where we were 10 years ago, and had a wonderful circle of people involved, many experts weighing in. So just to talk for a second about what are our incentives to do these kinds of things? Well, there is an exploding urban population. It's already over half the world's population. It's going to be, almost 70% by 2050, and a huge increase in Asia and Africa. So, there's going to be a lot of brand new cities built, and we need to be thinking about how those are designed. And this is a principle that I've definitely put out for years, and that is the reality of cities as the true network of our civilization versus the nation states, which I think we all see are are kind of becoming obsolete in many ways. And perhaps even the more difficult thing is the corporate constructs of global capitalism. We need to empower this network of cities, empower urban centers, not only to do the redesign that's necessary, but to give them more sovereignty, regional sovereignty. If local communities can control what happens within their region, we could rein in the corporate intrusion. But last but not least, as far as our incentives, we all know that we're in serious trouble as a global civilization. We know the seas are going to rise. And how will we house those displaced millions? We're going to have to build new cities.
That heal the planet.
That heal the planet. So what are the challenges? Well, the zoning and building codes and entrenched bureaucracies about the standard business as usual development, that's a barrier. Investment parameters dictated by traditional residential and commercial development interests and established financial models, they don't work for these kinds of new concepts. We also have our consumer culture that marginalizes innovation and alternative approaches to community planning. And we're all conditioned, you know. It's harder to change our lifestyle choices. And that's very much what this is all about. It's not just the design and tech solutions, it's social. So a few considerations about Califia. Certainly we're looking at a new kind of multi-stakeholder development, not the standard model. The kind of thing that we'd like to see happen here in California would require some very deep cooperation with the state, county, and whatever local cities and townships are involved. A new kind of diverse development consortium, the opportunity to incorporate an online platform from the get-go for the development groups that are involved and early community participation, bringing in the resources, experts, social systems, investment. Having, of course, an expert advisory board, new kinds of financial instruments. That's one of the big challenges is how you balance hard capital and social capital. But there's some wonderful opportunities with, as I mentioned earlier, the cryptocurrency and co-op models and so forth. Media programming being an important part of it because it would be very much have an educational component. And of course, collaboration with resident projects around the world, organizations and NGOs. So in exploring the potential scenarios for developing a project like this, we are talking about not an eco-village for 200 or even 2,000 people. We're talking about ultimately a large town for 10,000. And but it does make sense to consider the first phase of development to be on the eco-village level, a proto-community that would be the groups that are involved in the development of the project, some core community housing, and some early commercial enterprises. We had a lot of opportunities out at Arcology to use it as a test site for new technologies, and those opportunities were mostly not realized because Palo was so anti-commercial. But I think that's a really vital aspect of this project. There also could be some early agriculture and educational partnerships in the early stages of getting the community off the ground. But with the actual development of the larger project, it might have phases such as this, more residential, initial group of commercial spaces, perhaps bringing in some ecological research, kinds of organizations, university connections, a health complex, gardens, greenhouses, and farms. First kind of, critical mass level, maybe 500 or more residents in phase one. And then adding in phase two, expanding the residential, hotel, entertainment elements, and perhaps a tech research center. It's obvious that we may see such a project funded by some partnerships from the technology sector. And then, final phase would be finishing the megastructure and housing a much larger community. So these are some notions for such a project. I'm just going to go through a few more frames here, just looking at kind of some different visions and ideas. Obviously, it's the whole process of finding a site and developing the overall concept would, be a gradual collaborative design process. So having a visual concept for this, right now all we can do is just look at references. We can't get too specific on ideas until we go through such a multi-stakeholder process. But here's some different kind of concepts. That was the first one was a Solari drawing. This is the Charity Partnership, and I didn't mention earlier. I meant to say that when I was in San Diego, I experienced Horton Plaza. I don't know how many of you might have seen Horton Plaza before in San Diego, but at the time it was a groundbreaking shopping center in downtown San Francisco. In downtown San Diego, that brought a new life to the downtown area, and it was a very three-dimensional architecture. And I was very delighted with it because I thought looks like Paolo's thinking. And so a few years later, I was at the TED 2 conference, standing in line waiting to try a virtual reality demo, and the guy standing in line in front of me, and I'd heard of him because I looked into Horton Plaza, was John Jarity. And I said, John, I live in San Diego, and I really think Horton Plaza is an amazing and inspiring project. I've been working with Paolo Solari. He goes, oh, well, I was totally inspired by Paolo. I went to school out in Arizona. I slept under his drawing table at one point. And and that led to, in later years, not only Jarity's participation in the Paradox conferences, but we actually got together with them. And now these are guys, and it's worth looking at their website as well, jarity.com. They put together huge mixed-use infill developments all over the world, and multi-stakeholder big projects. So they knew how to build things, make things happen. And so for a couple of years, they worked closely with us at the Gosney Foundation to create a new plan to develop Arcology. And they included a whole plan for a adjacent whole structural area that was a health and wellness center. And it was a really pretty cool concept. I'm sorry it didn't ever go through all the way. Jarity did pass away a few years ago, but that was a very vital relationship, and his work remains inspirational as kind of a bridge from admittedly glorified shopping centers. I mean, they're mixed use of residential, commercial, entertainment, shopping kind of spaces, but they opened up a lot of new doors in that world. It's known as experience architecture, call it. So here's some early Arcology designs. Arcologies are designed containing, a number of common design ideas and, different primary principles, but the design of an Arcology is very much a product of its location and the needs of the community. So they're all different. So this is a little more right-brained few slides here. This is a image of Solari's most recent work, The Lean Linear City. And this is meant to be built over time in modules. The individual modules housing 1,500 people. Surrounded by natural land, transportation, power, water, sewage, all running along the arterial city. So back to Arcology, which remains our inspiration. That's the current model for the finished Arcology. You can see the small gray buildings, Old Town, the current Arcology, down in the lower part. And here's Arcology today. That's Jeff Stein, who was the president of the Gosney Foundation for many years. Was the dean of the Boston College School of Architecture. The use of curves and round windows instead of linear, unbelievable difference in just the feeling. Let's have a pool out there in the desert. Ceramics apps. This was at the Convergence conference a few months ago. Taiko drummers at night. All. This is David and Nadia and their son, and they're two longtime residents of Arcology. They had their son there, it's born there. In the bedrooms and their.
So that's one of the first Arcologians.
Yes, that's right.
A new subspecies of humanity.
Right. And that's David talking with Zach Cervello, who is one of the head honchos at the Burning Man Fly Ranch. Burning Man has purchased a huge property and is looking at various options for the development of that permanent community. I had the pleasure of staying in what originally was Paolo's apartment at Arcology, and so we were hanging out there a little bit, and there's Katrina, who's here tonight. So, you know, you're looking out the window. Now, if you were in one of the larger apses that you see in the Arcology models, you might have that same view, only from higher up, 20 stories up. This is Paolo's original drawing table in his studio there. A lot of creativity came out of that little room there. So that's the end of my formal discussion. And it'd be great to have a little, how much time do we have?
We're
right at 1 o'clock.
Yeah,
right at 9 o'clock.
Take a few minutes for Q&A, and so everyone feel free to ask questions. If you want your question to be recorded, please grab the mic. Otherwise, Michael, you may want to reiterate the question before you answer it.
Okay, can we get the lights up a little? Who has the lights? Way back?
Michael,
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
My question is about, you haven't spoken anything about transportation. So
That's a very
if
good
you're
question.
living in a city like this, where is your job going to be? How are you going to get to it?
A lot of walking and a lot of escalators and moving walkways were necessary.
Speak to the microphone.
Yeah.
A lot of walking, a lot of moving walkways and escalators and things like that in an arcology. It's all, things are meant to become in proximity, but certainly I kind of left out that subject, but in our discussions about building, I mean, we were looking at farms outside of Davis, California. I mean, we had a lot of conversations. I was over in Alameda looking at the whole military base there. I had a meeting with Jerry Brown's people in Oakland. I mean, we really did pursue this idea in the early 2000s. And some of our main connections were with alternative transportation initiatives that were going on, which is one of the ideas that it would be coupled with, well, I'm talking about transportation to get to the project, but certainly within a large archaeological complex, there would be different forms of transportation. But, you know, I didn't mention this earlier, but I grew up in Leawood, Kansas, a suburb of Kansas City, Missouri, and it was the Johnson County area back there. It's a sprawling upper middle class suburban area that was designed by J.C. Nichols and was actually the model, one of the first model suburbs in the country, and it was replicated all over the country and worldwide. So I actually grew up in one of the places that started the suburban model. And so, you know, I go out to college at Arizona State and find out that that's the, you know, the fall of civilization basically is a culture that encourages single family homes and the devastation of the landscape and designing whole cities around cars. You know? So simply put, an arcology is a city without cars.
But where are you going to work?
Well, you work wherever you choose to. Like right now, where do I work? I work at home. I go out to meetings. I mean, the lifestyles are changing. And plus, you know, here's another thing. Yes, robots are coming. Yes, artificial intelligence is coming. Yes, we're going to be put out of a lot of these standard kinds of jobs and professions. Well, what do we do with ourselves? Well, what happened to the Greek ideal? What happened to a society of people who are evolving themselves and educating themselves? You know, we don't have to do work in the same old way. So anyway, I'm just kind of going off on a tangent there. But if you live in a short-term future arcology, then you're going to be close to other metropolitan areas. And yes, you may well have a job at a tech firm in Silicon Valley if you live at Califia up north, and you'll go there however you can if you have to drive, whatever, you know. But the ideal arcology concept is that of a city without cars.
That's what I get, but then, you know, how do you pay your rent? Unless you work within will there be enough in this big city jobs that you don't have to work?
Ideally, yeah. Yes, sir.
My question is, I think
Oh, they're getting rowdy. Yeah, yeah.
We talked about pricing areas that all are, and we can rebuild. To be thinking about how do we build islands
of Hawaii, Hawaiian Islands, perhaps?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you're asking about, you know, the rising oceans, and you know, it was very dismaying to me over these decades to see how mainstream society basically ignored these concepts. But now I see that I guess this transmission of Solari and others is all about how we're going to house the displaced millions. You know, I mean, it's happening. The seas are going to rise, and we're going to have coastal communities wiped out. And according to some of our presentations at these Sierra Club dinners, be happening way faster than we think. 10 years, you know. Yeah. Well, there's all kinds of, you know, Solari did original island arcologies. Were some of his first design concepts, and also a dam arcology. Okay, if you have to build a dam, why not thicken it and make it a city that generates its own power, that waters its own farms? You know, those are some very compelling design ideas. Okay, let's get a few more questions in. Yes, ma'am.
Somebody said something about a modern mystery school. What's that?
That's Dom and Her. Yeah, Dom and Her is a modern mystery school, and that means that they actually did incorporate the teachings and even artifacts of a number of Egyptian and other European-based mystery schools. So they're very esoteric. Way in back, yes, sir.
Yeah, I was hoping you could speak a little more as to how students with ecology city studies and how the voice to the work of Mark Gosney.
Yeah.
Mark did a lot of research and found that the kids that we live in actually has roots to come in and take over these villages, which the plazas and the villages have these natural gatherings. During you knew that if you turn the village into a pit, then you separate people and they don't have a place to gather.
Yeah, the sentries can also see down all the streets and see what everybody's doing, and the whole great concept. Absolutely, Mark's work is wonderful. Placemaking movement.
Intersections there are in the village, our cities, the image is even the heart in the center of the grid. So I was just hoping you could speak to, you know, instead of like being able to go off and get a land and start a new project, how do we
Right. Yeah, that's actually very vital because in a way it's the most important thing that we retrofit, we build new systems and retrofit the existing infrastructures of our current cities to green them. And there's all kinds of solutions emerging more all the time for vertical gardens and windows that have solar cells built into them and things like this, the kinds of smart city concepts and new kinds of HVAC systems. And there's a lot to be done to green our current cities on a much grander scale than is currently going on. There's basically a lot of infill projects that have, just like the eco-villages, have different ideas and concepts that they brought through. In the commercial development world, these infill projects have pioneered all kinds of ideas, but now they need to be scaled up and replicated worldwide. You know, right here locally, Arab Corporation is a global engineering firm. They're huge. You know, they build ports. You know, they build infill projects. I've had them. They spoke at our World Environment Day event, and have been involved with some other people, and they would love to do projects like this. They are itching to do full-on Ecocity projects. But meanwhile, luckily, they're involved in a lot of the really pioneering green infill projects. I think also the ideas surrounding Arcology and eco-villages can be brought into our mainstream cities and towns. And there's wonderful initiatives such as Jonathan Mute's Place for Sustainable Living. If you don't know about that, Jonathan's here. He can maybe during the discussion tell us more about it. In Oakland, they're doing a great job with that. Okay, yes.
Thank you, Michael. It's really inspiring. And I was just wondering if you could speak to how these arcologies will actually integrate nature into them rather than cities right now. Birds, migrating birds, other animals come into the cities and are actually under threat by cars, by human habitation. So do those arcologies take into consideration?
So how do arcologies integrate the natural environment and the interplay of birds and other species and so forth? Well, the basic notion is that you build a megastructure, if you will. I know that sounds terrible, but a well-designed, aesthetically pleasing megastructure that includes on multiple stories all kinds of foliage and gardens and vertical farms and things built in, greenhouses and so forth. but at the same time, it's also surrounded by natural land. Instead of bulldozing over everything and making streets and highways and little houses, keep the land natural, have farms and gardens. So it's inherent to the concept that the natural and built environment are intersecting. Okay, a couple more questions. Yes, ma'am.
How is human waste dealt with in existing types of arcologies, and how will it be dealt with in future arcology?
Well, I think we would look at some of our advanced porta potties we have out at the festivals that are using systems to deal with human waste. I would cite a book that we have with Synergetic Press. And by the way, if any of you want, synergeticpress.com. The code word is FRIENDS for 20% off any of our books. Okay. Synergeticpress.com, FRIENDS. And one of the books is called The Wastewater Gardener, written by Mark Nelson, who is one of the biospherians. And that's all about how we turn human waste into fertilizer, basically. Yes, sir.
I feel like we've done a really great job of building a lot of the building blocks and other town scale projects.
Yeah.
But what's the critical thing that happen to go from speculative, this is what we're going to create, to like, this is what's happening, then evolve, here's how it's actually going to happen. Like, what you get, what you think, how many donate, why aren't we there yet?
And please repeat the question.
What needs to change so we can really see projects like this emerge? Well, I did discuss the challenges, the zoning and so forth. I would like to think that we're going to see some forward-thinking leaders show up in the realms of commercial development and states and local governments and major NGOs, United Nations, who are going to be more willing than in the past, to change the rules and do some dramatic projects. That's all I can say. And by the way, I have no formal affiliation. I'm just really kind of an educator, networker in this space. But I am hoping that kind of bringing this subject up again. Thanks again to Jamin for encouraging me to bring this information out. Maybe we can get something sparked. It certainly is a much more poignant moment now than it was 10 or 12 years ago. One last question in the back.
Obviously, actualizing these concepts a lot more.
Yes.
I'm curious about your comments about plenty of projects who are like so many of the people sitting on billions of dollars will actually do it. But how do you see intergenerational transfer of wealth, those who capitalize on the 20th century economy actually donating it to the next generation?
Intergenerational transfer of wealth and how do we get things moving? Well, that's a very complex question, but I will say that I hold out a lot of hope for our younger members of the regenerative culture movement. And, we have organizations around that are, really encouraging dialogue and new ways of, new models for philanthropy. I think it's basically, it's about a spark to get things going and a couple of, I'd like to see Califia and maybe 2 other sister projects around the world evolve together, It's got to be a network of projects, really. But I do think that 1 or 2 exciting projects could ignite a whole movement. And I think there's a lot of wealth that's sitting out there, and people who have such wealth wanting to do something, but they don't really know where the real leverage could be. So, how are you doing, Jim? Those of you we couldn't talk to right now, we'll have a chance when we have a discussion. So thank you very much, everyone.
Well, actually, I was going to suggest, this is such a great discussion. Is anyone opposed to the Q&A continuing for a little bit? Do people need to get rolling? Okay, I'll tell you what. Some folks do need to get rolling, so let's give break. We'll just take a little break, and then the conversation is going to continue. So please stick around. Those of you who would like to and who can, please stick around. If we need to work out how we're going to, carpool or get y'all home, those of you who need a ride, we'll work that out. Okay? So everyone who wants to stay, please stay. We'll take about a 15-minute break so people can, who need to go, can make their goodbyes and pick themselves up and whatnot. And we need to break down a couple things here and reorganize. Please stick around, because this is an answer to a lot of the questions that have been answered. How do we make this happen? We make it happen right here, right now. This is arguably one of the biggest gatherings related to Arcologies in over a decade. So thank you all for being here. And once again, please give a big thank you to Michael Gosney.
I don't know if I'm sorry. Next Gen is part of Global Ecologies Network.
All right, so here's what's going to happen. We're going to reorganize, and I'll graciously accept some volunteer help in moving tables and chairs. We're basically going to build a big oval right here in the front of the room. Okay? So anyone who wants to give us a hand, we're going to be moving these tables to the sides and to the back.
Michael.
Move from some angry caterers.
Oh, okay.
This is Christina.
Hi.
And just made the introduction up. So let's give them a hand as we move tables to the sides and to the back, so we can just create a big open area right here in the front.
Portuguese, by the way, from Portugal.
Oh, really?
Yeah. All right, so we'll be back in a few minutes, probably about 10, maximum 15 minutes.
Are you guys local
Thanks,
here?
everyone.
Yes, that's great.
Well, great.
It's a great talk. Really.
Was it good?
Yeah,
Good.
awesome. Really fun.
Yeah, I had never done it before, so.
How do you know Ann?
From the old tech days.
Yeah. Grace, no time or Ion?
She let me know you were going to be here. Ions.
So you know Ty too.
Oh, yeah, very well.
Right. Ty's an old buddy of mine.
Well, I put out Urban Interactive in 1991, the first true multimedia CD-ROM. And music tracks on it.
Right on.
And that inspired Ty to do what he did.
Cool. Well,
He told me that. So
I did one of the first virtual reality bands.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Group out of Germany called just called Global Visions of Mother Nature. I wore an animation tracking system. We did this gigantic virtual reality projection, video mix, the virtual character that I was controlling, instruments, animations, yeah.
Mark Canner would have liked to
Oh, I
do
know
that.
Mark very well. Yeah, it was a dream project.
He aspired to
He
do what you were doing.
aspired to do it.
He never did it.
He didn't have my budget.
Right.
But we just wanted to say hello, and what a great talk. Yeah, awesome.
Congratulations. Look forward to this. Be in touch.
you.
Yeah. Next time Anne's in town, we'll all hang out. You guys come over to my house.
Oh, right on. Cool.
Hey, buddy.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
It's another realm.
It's all related. Yes,
I'm just going to start creating the oval and this table and that round. Really, we be able to get these three tables. But I think we can do this fine here. So, yeah, let's get these tables. Here, I'll do it. Let me just walk around some perimeters.
all the cool small press. So the most why is that? We were all selling. We were all happy to sell 1,000 copies.
And then over there, so I'm going to push those other tables out. I'll take care of these tables. Because actually, you can get this one. Super chairs.
Guys met? My good friend Arcologies.
right.
I have to say though, I know you're very busy, but maybe I went to
Oh, yeah. Actually, I appreciate it very much. I make no representation. It's like you make well, you know, like my dad used to say, my dad used to say, one of my favorite for land. He doesn't appreciate the land.
No, the age some new taxes. I know. We had a bunch of money.
Right.
But that was a lot of money then.
Well, I appreciate it all friends. Whatever
73, 73.
Kids,
Well, it's all the same money. It's all the same money. You know, everybody thinks. Yeah, it's gonna be this much later. They don't listen. No, I they all.
I think if I were one, I'd probably have a totally different view.
What?
You can argue that. So what would you recommend? Did I cut ties? I should look at all that. Yeah, but operate. How do I operate? Do I stop and write? You talk about guys in here.
I think you have to have a talk.
You might have oh my goodness. Thank you. Great to meet you. I'm really glad you're here. And I overheard some of your conversations you were making earlier. I published a book after, but I got to keep moving around the chair.
So, I used to have big dogs.
Yeah, and not for sons.
My little Jack.
I was
Right here.
I would see it. He didn't touch it.
It's amazing how they know it's a dog. They know it's not a cat. It can be this big or this big, and you know it's a dog.
There's nothing I could have done even if that was. And I'm going to stretch it out a little. So I'll call people in.
Can I have everyone's attention for just 30 seconds? 30 seconds. And hey, can I, I'm sorry, can I get everyone's, just for 30 seconds, can I get Mark? Can I, yeah, just get his attention. I'm sorry, hey, gentlemen? Can I get everyone's just 30 seconds, and then you can go back to talking. That's all. That's all, if you can get his attention back there. Thank you. Just 30 seconds, and then okay, here goes. Would everyone who wants to participate in the after presentation discussion keep talking to each other, but come over here and be part of the oval? Those who don't want to participate, maybe start to migrate outside. Because, you know, the yacht club is pretty big here. There's plenty of room out there. But those who do want to participate, please come on in. You can leave any time. They're not going to lock the doors. This isn't a prison. But please give it a try, because this is an important part of Arcologies, is the collective intelligence. The gentleman asked, how are we going to make this happen? This is how we make it happen. Right here. So please come join the oval. We're not going to bite you. And thank you for that. And then those who want to not be on camera, Andre, where would you recommend the people who don't want to be on camera? Where should they sit? Okay, if you don't want to be on camera, come sit over here, right? If you do want to be on camera, sit over here. See where Tony is? Raise your hand, Tony. If you want to be on camera, be on this, I don't know, 70% of the oval. If you don't, Melissa, you want to raise your hand? Go over where Melissa is if you don't want to be on camera. That neck of the woods, okay? Thank you. Anyway, if you want to be on camera, come over here. Michael, lead your people. The Arcology is happening here. Come join it. Hey, sweetie. All right, guys. Thank you. How are you? My request is very simple. If you want to stay in this room, please join this room. If you don't, keep talking out there. But we much prefer to have you here. You want to, the circle is all here. You want to take a part Yeah. All right. Michael, you want to join me here?
Yeah.
And we'll, so Andre, I think we'll be kind of, and sweetie, if you want to be on camera, you want, okay, that's fine.
Is this the on-camera side over here?
Yeah. This is where we're going to be on camera. Yeah.
Well done.
No, I got it. I'm good.
That's great.
All right. Yeah, feel free to gather around. Feel free to move to one of these closer chairs.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to the after presentation. The only thing I request is that we just have one person speaking at a time. And do we have a way to pass around the microphone that's flexible, or how do you want to do that, Andre? Or do you got it? Or do you got it well with that? Well enough with that? You got that?
You need it for the video? Is that what you need?
No, I just want to know about the microphone. So, but Andre,
we can hear each other. So
okay. So again, if you want to be on camera, if you're open to that, please be on. Essentially, are you yes or no to the camera? Either way is fine. Yeah. Okay.
I think everybody's fine.
We're fine.
Okay, everyone's fine with it. Okay. So thanks everyone. Thank you, and join the circle. What I'd like to propose for starters is that we go around the room and we just each of us talk briefly for maybe a minute or two, maybe maximum couple of minutes, about what projects or programs or transformational initiatives are we participating in ourselves personally. And I'll start with myself just to kind of, set the example, and then Michael, and then just like maximum 2 minutes. So my name's Jamin Shively. In addition to being program chair for the Sierra Club dinners, which I do on a volunteer basis, I'm also the president and co-founder of radish.org, which I collaborate on with Michael and a number of other colleagues. Tony is here with us today, and my partner Melissa and Adam and Andre and a bunch of other folks, building a platform and putting it into practice for collective intelligence. This is a manifestation of collective intelligence, what we're doing right here. And thank you all for being here. I'm also working on lobbying the Catholic Church to get Pope Francis to step into a major leadership role. He took a major leadership role in writing his most recent encyclical, published in 2015, Laudato Si, on care for our common home. Really amazing, radical, revolutionary book. Radical, I'm talking about to the roots of capitalism and consumer culture and everything else. He would love Arcologies, and probably does, because he's been down in the weeds. So doing a major effort there, and working with my partner, my girlfriend Melissa, on saving the orcas in the Pacific Northwest region on a very local level, and working on a project to end world hunger and to transform the economy into a compassionate economy, and to get connected with all of you through collective intelligence. So that's my example of a concise, what am I working on? We'll just go around the circle. And it's totally optional to speak, by the way. You can take a pass if you don't want to speak. So very, very
well, I've already shared. I mean, I can just again mention Synergetic Press. I'm excited about the stuff.
Maybe speak up a little bit.
Synergetic Press and the Biosphere 2 project. I think there's some great resources there. And also working on to network the festival culture and intentional community movement and permaculture movements and other associated communities of practice in a private collaboration called the Communitas Zone. So we're in the early stages of developing this to create more synergies and interaction. So between focused on these parallel cultures that have been evolving over many years, the intentional community movement and the conscious festival culture. So that's
So about 18 months ago, I went to the, my name is Josh Wolf. About 18 months ago, I went to the Oregon Eclipse Festival, where I went to a panel discussion on using festival values to build intentional community that Michael gave, and asked the question, very similar to the question I asked tonight, what's happening? How are we going to actually make this happen? And since then, I've been working to build a project called Symbio City that is an effort to move forward in creating a 5,000 person plus regenerative city where we grow the majority of the food we consume and really take the eco-village to that level that we were talking about today. And obviously, there's a lot of stuff to do about that. So I'm looking at anyone else doing similar things, including the smaller scale to learn how to do the bigger scale, the transition network, and just anything I can learn about how we can actually build these communities. Because having lived in San Francisco for about 15 years, 90% of all my artists and freaks and weirdo friends are all gone because they can't afford to live there. And instead of all of us going to the same new city, which would be beautiful and awesome and amazing and great, everyone's been spread out across everywhere. There's an archipelago of sanity across the country. And if we can actually come together and build something at the 1,000 person scale, I think we can do some really, really powerful shit. So that's what I'm here for.
Amen. Hallelujah. Woo! Thank you, John.
Symbio, what's your website again?
Symbio, SYMBIO.city. So it's a kind of combination of symbiosis and city. It also creates a new word, symbiosity, in case anyone's looking to conjugate new words.
Beautiful.
So how can we help you? What do you need?
I mean, the zoning is the biggest hurdle. So the more people we can get together to try to figure out where we can actually build this, if anyone has contacts with local governments to make that zoning happen, if you don't have those contacts and you try calling local governments to figure out which one will work with you, you quickly learn that there's it's always a conditional use, and they're happy to talk to you once you buy the land. But you can't buy 25,000 acres and then have the conversation about whether or not it's possible to do what you want, because 25,000 acres isn't like a spur of the moment kind of buy for anyone who's not Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg, neither one of which are in my phone yet. So if you have their phone numbers, that'll work too.
My name is Mark Kasky, colleague of Michael's. Several years ago that he mentioned. And I want to add one thought to this discussion, which is looking for how do we make it happen, where do we make it happen. There's a resource that most people don't think of. It's former military bases that are closed. These are, in many cases, outstanding facilities, houses and offices and recreational facilities, meeting facilities, great locations often. And gradually, over a period of years, they're being closed with the Base Realignment Closure Commission. I was director of Fort Mason Center for 20 years from the beginning. That's been a successful conversion. When I left there, I'm still involved with them now for 40 years. But when I left there, I went down to San Diego. I commuted to San Diego for 8 years to help them close the Naval Training Center. Naval Training Center, now, if you look it up under Liberty Station, it's got housing, offices, retail, recreational, major cultural facilities, 26 buildings, 25 acres of cultural facilities. It's hotels, restaurants, and people. It's used by people who live there, facilities who work there. Because of the nature of the development, people visit as well. So just one model one possible resource to look at is military bases, and they schedule them being closed. And I guess one last comment I'll make about it is I had an idea a few years ago, which I'm not the best person to pursue in terms of the administration, execution of the interesting, which is contact the Defense Department. They can be heroes in the sustainable regional development all over the country. They own these facilities. They're going to be dispensing them to whether cities, counties, states, or developers. They could actually set criteria for the redevelopment of these former villages. Have all sustainable principles involved in it. Nobody dispense them to entities that agree to execute them. That would make this essentially no cost to them. Heroes in sustainable.
Heroes in defending Mother Earth. Whole new meaning for defense. Yeah.
Look at these facilities, military bases serve national purpose. That national purpose is no longer needed. It's another national interest. Now,
Beautiful.
Those two projects, Fort Mason and Liberty Station, are both very inspirational models. Fort Mason in particular is just the envy of cities all over the world. People constantly visit. I know this. Mark was recently given a wonderful award and recognition for the work that he did with Fort Mason. But there's constantly cities come visit and they learn from it. Regenerative projects in their own communities like that. So
now look at the Presidio, which has the potential to be even a greater version of that if it's had that in mind. And so I'm trying to work with them to shift their thinking just a little bit, not convert them 180 degrees, but shift their thinking, incorporate these values.
How beautiful is that? That Josh asks the question, how do we make this happen? And sitting right to his right is to his left and right are pioneers who've made this happen. So that's what I'm talking about. This is magic, what's happening right here.
So my name's Tony. Jamie mentioned that work about Radish, which is about public intelligence.
Yeah, speak up.
Sorry, so my name's Tony. I'm project Jamie Michael part of Radish, which is about promoting collective intelligence. My immediate interest is in psychedelic therapy. I'm doing an intro counseling psychology program at CIS. So in a very roundabout way, my interest in being here is to evolve human consciousness and be part of all the new social systems that benefits from that. So,
awesome.
Hey guys, my name is Sai. In many ways, the work I do is the exact opposite of everyone so far that's been mentioned, which is all in-person stuff. For me, I have a platform called Crowdcast, which is a live streaming platform that allows people to gather, just like we're gathering, but virtually at scale. Just today we held an event at 17,000 people. Yeah, it's like an organizing tool to share ideas.
Awesome.
And it is awesome to broadcast.
To talk about the next year.
You'll be going on that. Yeah.
I'd love that.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Let's connect on that. Definitely.
Hello, my name is Keisha, and I'm one of the founders that place that John founded. And I am an urban farmer and gardener. And yeah, generally very interested in eco-villages and all of this, which is why I'm here and why I live. Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Ute. I was at the Cell Space Community Art Center in the Mission District of San Francisco for 8 years. It wound up being there for 17 years. It was a shared art facility, a makerspace before the term makerspace was born. Then took a traveling eco caravan across the United States for 8 years, known as the Sustainable Living Roadshow, trying to bring some of the ethos of the Bay Area, the West Coast in general, and spread it all around the country. And then we settled down here in the northwest corner of Oakland with the Place for Sustainable Living. And the Place for Sustainable Living is an art and ecology community center dedicated to permaculture, regenerative design, resilience, preparedness, creating a hub and to decentralize sort of like the awareness and the technology and to demystify them in sort of like one spot. So that all of these green technologies exist in one location, from passive solar design, rainwater collection, gray water systems. We're doing a radiant heat floor soon, on down the line, with classes and workshops to then teach people how to integrate that into their own lives. That being said, you know, we do a lot of initiatives locally, work with community members, have a hyper-local sort of approach. Placemaking is a big part of what we do. Obviously, we've learned a lot from City Repair up in Portland to engage people and bring them out of their homes into the public commons. And to that effect, I think that every neighborhood should have a little place for sustainable living. And instead of trying to rent space for $5,000 a month, which is what we pay, I feel like there's a huge opportunity in, you know, connecting with the Rec and Park department and using Rec and Park sites as a green living centers that can be done in a series of weekends, green makeover, using, you know, local, you know, sort of permaculturalists and urban ag folk, but also connect with the CERTs and the NERTs. That's emergency response, you know, sort of teams that are based locally, as well as the plumbers union doing gray water and rainwater, and the carpenters union learning how, you know, natural building, and the electricians union, you know, doing solar and wind generation. So get everyone on board and have these centers be hubs for green living, so that you can actually then convert your neighborhood. And you know, the whole idea of having a resilient neighborhood is the ability to bounce back from an adverse situation. The disaster could hit at any moment right here because we're on fault lines, you know. So if we have these, you know, sort of this awareness with everyone has water that they're collecting and everyone has gardens that they're growing food in, we don't have 72 hours worth of backup supplies. We have months of backup supplies because we're growing our own food. We've collected hundreds of gallons of water off of our roofs, and that is just part of our new culture. So that's something that we're really pushing ahead at, and we're open to connecting and partnering. And I did also want to reference Christiania. He is in a group of hippies in Denmark, in Copenhagen, took over their version of the Presidio and turned it into the sovereign nation neighborhood of Christiania, or Christiania. And it's an amazing model, and it's exactly what you're describing of taking, you know, former military outposts and converting them into collectively run, community-oriented, and sustainably sort of minded villages. You know, so anyway, just wanted to make reference to that.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Jonathan.
I know it's 4 minutes. I'm sorry.
Oh, come on. No, look, I just want to mention, Jonathan gets a kitchen pass because of everyone I've ever met in my life. For me personally, he is the one who embodies the culture of Arcologies. I mean, he lives it, he breathes it, he leads it. He sets example. He's taken it across the country and been the Johnny Appleseed.
Yes, he has.
So kitchen pass for you, brother.
All right.
And we'll keep it in.
I haven't seen his puppet show.
I haven't seen his puppet show. All right.
My name's Robert. I teach public administration at CSU East Bay, and politics and psychology at College of Alameda, right next to the naval base, and trying to have it fun. I've always had a building out there. There's been some discussion. I'm the coordinator of the Community Change and Urban Leadership Initiative, which is a project designed to take community change type material and turn it into college coursework, and designing pathways to help people create careers towards community change and urban leadership. And And we've had a number of workshops, and the idea of possibly rejuvenating urban center of Oakland. We have a violence prevention certificate program. We have a pathway to law school, good money. But and the idea is getting lawyers who are trained in the idea of social justice and community change, being trained at the earliest level. And I've also been involved in training about 300 County of Alameda employees with MTA degrees, with partnership between the county and CSU East Bay. But at any rate, we have the ability to offer space to do conferences and workshops, and to do not-for-credit workshops that are offered through the college, so it gives them that gravitas for whatever it's worth. And we can do that if anyone's interested. That's what I bring to the table.
Beautiful, beautiful. Wow.
Oh my gosh, I'm just like getting more and more thrilled. Like every time I hear somebody speak, I'm like, what? That's so cool. What are like amazing fucking goals in there. And thank you, Jamin, for making this happen.
No, well, this is a collective effort, right? The Sierra Club dinners are, you know, a collective intelligence making this happen. And Michael and all of you, we all made this happen together. So thank right back at you, and thank all of you.
Awesome. My name is Katrina Zwani. Sometimes I go by Katrina, KK for short. And I've had the privilege of working with a few folks here, Gaz and Johnny and James, and maybe some of you in the future. So I'm a community organizer, event planner, and actually my dream is to run a community center. So hearing all of this is very intriguing and exciting. I want to play. Also have done a lot of sustainability work and training things like Burning Man or Disney, lots of events, and want to bring more and keep it sustainable, keep it light, but also keep the community aspect alive. That's the most important social fabric. So something I'm really excited about, and I'm hoping we can pull Jonathan's puppet skills out towards. So I've been working with Starhawk on a regenerative land management program. And so that's going to start here soon. So if you know anyone who wants to be a farmer or a rancher or work in regenerative land, that's starting in May. We're going to do a fundraiser coming up soon. And I'm really hoping that we'll see some farmer puppets up on stage for that. And looking for a venue for the end of March, beginning of April. I would say 250 to 500 people. Just to raise some good funds for diversity scholarships. So if you have a venue, let me know. And I also run my own nonprofit where I do a lot of resource allocation and supporting communities who have challenged situations, such as Nepal, who got deeply affected by the fires. So I've been working 3 villages out there supporting their livelihood programs through agriculture trainings, leadership trainings, and helping them develop micro enterprise. And so I really like to work in a holistic nature and look at all of the different ways we can help the communities thrive and have a good economic foundation. So that's a model that I'm working to replicate in other places, and there's a couple of spots in Africa that we're working with, in particular Uganda and Mali. And the bonus is I'm working with Rotary Club and Rotary Foundation. So when we raise enough money, then they'll match that 2.5 times, and we'll have a lot more money to work with. Yeah, those are a couple of things I have in the works. Oh, and one last one is disaster relief. So I'm also working with some folks in sustainable regenerative models for the disaster relief, especially California. So I like to organize, and I want to play with you all. So let's make some things happen.
Awesome. Thank you, Katrina. Thank you. Who's next? Okay.
Hi, I'm Rains, and I've gone from calling myself a co-housing coach to an eco-village ambassador in part of my experiences at Arcology and with the Global Eco-Village Network. Community organizing, helping people build sustainable neighborhoods where you know your neighbors, and living green is not just a matter of the sticks and bricks of green building, but the way you live, the way you relate, the way you move around, and the social layers we build on top of that. And so I'm excited by the physical design and inspiration from places like Arcology. I'm really interested in the social structures and how do we make this a place where people want to live, can take care of each other, can support each other, and how do we scale that up from what we're doing in community today.
Wow, beautiful.
Hi, my name's Karen, and I wrote my bullet points down here. I think I was triggered to get into all of this way back in college. I went to SUNY at Buffalo, and I had an architectural teacher by the name of Michael Grill, and he talked about general systems theory back. The big thing. And then also got me into Bucky Fuller, and I remember I sent away for some kind of dome thing. Folded up.
You too.
I still had it.
Don't kid.
Anyway, that's what triggered all of that in me. And then I've been to Arcology 4 times over the course of 30 years, I'd say. I went that first time in the 80s, and I only stayed there once, and I'm planning to go there actually in February, just coincidentally. Planning to go, and thanks, you sent that email to a few people, and I didn't know about this at all because I don't come to these regularly, and so because of your email. So,
wow, thank you.
You just sent it like a week ago. That one. Okay. Anyway, so Arcology, and I think having seen it over 30 years or so, that it's on the upswing. It seemed to me the last time I was there, like a year and a half ago. You know, like it goes through like crumbling concrete issues, right? And then it just seems like this last time was a little more on the upswing, so that was good. I've lived in 2 cooperative situations in my lifetime, in the Haight-Ashbury, and then also on a floating situation on a tall ship for 3 years, which were the 3 best years of my life.
Wow.
So I'm big on it. I like, living with groups of people and all that. At Burning Man, I'm EGAD, which stands for Earth Guardians Activities Director, and I run the environmental stage there. So, Burning Man, we have Black Rock City, has 70,000 people for a little over a week every year. And even though we bring things to the playa, there's still the social capital that's there on the playa that's quite evolved and evolving still.
It's a super critical term, concept, social capital.
Yeah.
Super important in this context.
I also am in Transition Town initiatives here in Berkeley. I have a mushroom farm in my backyard. I call it a fungaria. I raise toffee mushrooms. And I just want to mention that I like reading climate science fiction. I call it Cli-Fi. And one book that I read not too awfully long ago was Paolo Bacigalupi called The Water Knife, and he mentions about arcology in that book. Except it ends up, all the elite end up in these beautiful new arcology places.
A bunch of sociopaths. Perfect.
I just want to throw that out about the Cli-Fi, tie-in to this also.
Beautiful. Thank you, Karen.
Hi, I'm Phoebe, and I live here in Berkeley, and I've been here 31 years in my neighborhood. I'm an artist and an arts educator for the city of Berkeley. But I've always been interested in alternative types of living. I had some really great ideas when I lived in San Francisco over 40 years ago about opening up a whole block, but everybody buying the block and open up the inside, and we could create these little, places in the city. A lot of people are sort of it seems kind of impossible now, but there's a lot like the place for the place. It's fabulous. And I just know there's so much possibility inside of our cities. And yet I was drawn to this presentation tonight for the idea of, oh, the place outside that is visionary and is being built. And I'm sorry there's not a site already for Califia. I call it Califia. Califia. Anyway, but being in one community for 30 years really allows the kind of resonance. I work with transition towns also. I have done lots of these projects on my own neighborhood scale. Crisis, whatever it is. Earthquake prevention, not prevention, but readiness.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. And gathering water storage and gray water and gardens and all that stuff that we do to make our communities more resilient. It helps us personally. And I think that, there's just a lot that can, like Mark Whiteman's work. Intersection repair.
City repair.
City repair.
City repair.
I forgot to mention, I'm one of the OGs from City repair.
That's great. I mean, so many people are doing such great work. I love the idea that it is coming together in some wonderful way that we can share it all ends.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Phoebe.
Good evening. My name is Willard Chin, and thank you for hosting and just facilitating, giving a space to talk and create a community.
You're welcome.
I work for the United States Environmental Protection Agency. That means right now I'm in a kind of forced sabbatical by certain traumatic events taking place in Washington, D.C. So, but when I mean sabbatical, for me, the chance to kind of recharge my batteries, take time to re-inspire and to reflect. A lot of my colleagues, a lot of people are under hardships right now. So I understand that. But I'm hoping that once we get back to work, I can get back to my day job, which is my U.S. EPA programs at the tribal office. I work with California and Nevada Indian tribes. The United States government created Indian reservations. So we have jurisdiction and responsibility on environmental protection. And I work with tribes who are both affluent and extremely poor. Sometimes it's a matter of lacking capital to build infrastructure. They're sovereign entities, but they're federally dependent on the government, meaning that all infrastructure, drinking water, sanitation, environmental cleanup, it's all dependent on the U.S. EPA or maybe tribal housing and urban development. So there's the equivalent program to do all sorts of things. My day job, my focus is really on building capacity to help tribes develop their own environmental program, help tribes develop their own EPA program. But a lot of the tribes are in very, very rural area. So I personally don't get involved in rural development per se, but we can guide them towards a more sustainable development. Whether it be, again, it's a different paradigm in terms of isolated, poor rural communities. Of course, now with microgrids, and evolving technology, maybe we define appropriate technology. So I'm here to learn, and if there's an opportunity, during the Obama administration, there was a consolidation or strategic plan partnership between EPA, Department of Transportation, and HUD to work together to build sustainable community. Of course, that program's been phased out, and of course, nothing's happening under this administration. But things will change, or can change. So I'm willing to really engage my tribal partners in sustainable development, whether it be someone like Grid Alternative or what have you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Willie.
Well, I'm really honored to follow you. I'm adopted into the Haida tribe, which are from Alaska. I'm in the Raven clan. I carved Haida for 10 years. I grew up on an island in the Mediterranean called Cyprus, and I had an animal sanctuary in the back garden of our house, so I've always been connected to wildlife, migratory birds, actually put myself between hunters who are trying to shoot songbirds and telling them to not do that anymore. So I've always been an animal activist since I was a kid. And I went through the war in 1974 in Cyprus, and so I saw the island burn up, that effect of violence. And then I am a graduate of the Architectural Association, so I was really familiar with Arcology and Paulo Soleri's work, because at that time at the AA, there was a lot of teaching of this type of work. So I've always been interested in Ecocities. And now I'm a visual artist and an environmental activist. I use my work to speak out for Mother Earth. I'm a defender of Mother Earth. Jamin and I live on Whidbey Island, so we're back on another island. Whidbey's pretty progressive. The kids grow their own food, and it's the first school that public school that's allowed to cook the food the kids grow and get to eat their own food, which is really awesome. Right now I'm focusing on the orcas who are starving to death because there's not enough Chinook salmon, that's otherwise known as king salmon. So we're like boycotting king salmon, we're not eating it. I've been leading what I call living murals. So I call the community with other artist friends and Jamin, and we come together, we constructed a 100-foot orca out of our bodies. We dressed in black, with black umbrellas, and a friend flew a drone over us, and another friend a vintage airplane, and took aerial photos, and we had a huge sign that said "Restore the Salmon." So we're using these art projects to activate local community, and then they're followed up by actions that we can take, like signing petition letters that go to our governors and different local government senators, etc., to ask them to take action to help, in this case, the orcas, by taking down dams that are obsolete to free up so the Chinook can return to ancestral spawning grounds. And also, I'm very interested in connecting communities, so First Nations with non-First Nations people, so that we can all become advocates together for Mother Earth. And you guys are all amazing. I love hearing your stories. Thank you for all the work you're doing.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Well, I'm Adam Soul, and really pleased to be here with all these brains. I wrote the Road to Life Plan, which is, I have the roadtolifeplan.com website. And the Road to Life Plan is based on the concept that money is a poison to mankind. And it gets into Arcologies in a way because it describes how we can live without money. When you start realizing and start thinking about how we can live without money, all of a sudden the doors start opening. For instance, if you take the 40-hour work week and you just eliminate the amount of money, the amount of time that we spend just dealing with money, you're going to end up removing like 25% of the hour work week. And I did some estimates, and I got down to by the time you do business consolidation and standardization and things like this, you can get that work hour week down to 15 hours a week, and then you can develop a volunteer workforce. And then people would move in neighborhoods. We would have to move in together in order to, and this is where the arcology part comes in, because if people start moving in together, they're going to have to start taking advantage of basements and start growing our own food. I think this is really critical, and this is what we're going to have to do. My plan is pretty radical, and it may not, I don't expect people to just jump aboard. So I think it's right, but I don't think people will just jump aboard it. So I've joined Jamin in the Radical Collective Intelligence because I see us building it in virtual reality. And in other words, it's like building a skyscraper. Before you dig the first shovel, put the first shovel in the ground, You build the entire skyscraper in virtual reality. You have a set of plans that details everything. And this is how we build our way out. This is how we find our road to life. We build it in virtual reality. And in virtual reality, our differences can be resolved. And we can use artificial intelligence to help us. And so that's where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Adam.
Hello, my name is Gerd. That's G-E-R-D, rhymes with bird. I always do that because Anglos have trouble with that name. I feel kind of weird here because this is all about community, blah, blah, blah. And on this continuum from community organizer, I'm at the Robinson Crusoe end. Robinson Crusoe was the guy who lived on a desert island for 28 years and did everything by himself. Now, in the Bay Area, I'm a visitor now. I've lived in the Bay Area for 25 years and never lived in Berkeley, but I have a pretty good idea of how the Bay Area works. So I kind of understand your stories. In terms of life history, I've never gravitated towards community things. And I've had more zip codes than anybody I know on 3 continents. And I mean, not necessarily zip codes technically, but in terms of addresses. And I've never really settled down anywhere. I've now been in one place for, I think I've now had one zip code for the longest time ever, 11 years. And that's about 5 hours from here at 3,500 feet. So we don't worry about sea level, but we're concerned with other kinds of natural issues. And you've seen it on TV. I just drove through that area around Paradise today. Fire is a big deal out in the woods. And I have a question. Does anybody in this circle know about All Power Labs in Berkeley?
Yeah, they're awesome.
Because my main reason for speaking is I want to put in a plug for them and want to point out, if you just check out that website, they have a fabulous website, All Power Labs. Every second Friday of the month, they have an open house. You can go there and get a presentation and find out what they're doing and get free pizza and drinks.
Sounds like community to me.
Sure.
Yeah.
When is the free pizza?
Every second Friday.
Second Friday of the month from 5 to 7. What fascinates me about All Power Labs, they are working actively on a concept that could have an interesting impact on fires in California. Fires in California, complicated story, but the biggest thing is there are too many trees in the forest. And it's incredibly expensive to remove them, and wood chips are $15 a ton, so you can't haul them very far. What All Power Labs has done, they have latched on to a World War II technology. The military ambitions of the Germans created a huge oil crisis in Europe. And it turns out, as a result, people are tinkering with what do we do instead. And I didn't know this. Over 1 million vehicles in Europe ran on wood chips during World War II. Most of the German army ran on wood chips. I happen to have memories of some of those rigs. I actually saw a guy get out of his car, grab a burlap sack of wood, dump it in that big kettle in the back of his car and drove off. And I hadn't thought about this for eons until about 6-8 years ago, when through a complicated story, I got a hold of All Power Labs. And so what I'm working on, I have a 1974 Datsun pickup truck. Picture these tiny little things. And I'm working on making it run on wood chips to get it in our local parade to just get people interested in the concept. Now, All Power Labs has taken that technology, was incredibly messy 70, 80 years ago, and combined it with all kinds of tricks from Silicon Valley, and they're working on and supposedly they're going commercial next spring. Their plan is to build 500 portable power plants that travel on a 20-foot trailer that you can take out in the woods, and they can make their own fuel and make electricity that plugs into PG&E. It moves excess fuel from the woods and turns it into usable energy. For me, it's a fascinating concept, and I think everybody in Berkeley ought to know about it. So, second Friday of the month, pizza at All Power Labs on Murray Street.
Beautiful. Wow. Now, is there anyone who wants to?
Does Andre want to?
Yeah, I was just asking. If anyone wants to who hasn't spoke, please raise your hand. Otherwise, so thank you everyone for all the great introductions. You know, one of the first things that comes to mind is I'd love for all of us to kind of stay connected, who chooses to. So if you haven't signed the contact sheet and would like to, please raise your hand, and Melissa will. There you go. Just.
I have another question. Is this being live streamed anywhere right now?
Yeah, we're currently live streaming on my YouTube channel, just through this laptop right here, because there's a number. Pardon me?
Is that in the Eventbrite or whatever the channel was?
No, it's not on there. Basically, this is square wheel, 5,000 years ago technology relative to what Sai has developed.
I just asked because I got folks like the old friend who wishes he was here.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, we're live streaming it, so I want to know how we can pop people in on that.
Yeah. That's one of the things why I'm also asking for whoever wants to volunteer to help, bring the Sierra Club dinners into the 21st century. So we can do that for future dinners. But we're also, Andre is recording this with a much better technology, so we'll have a much. This is just sort of a stopgap kind of thing, but love to work with you, Sai, to bring it to your platform as well. And in fact, one of the ways that we can collaborate that occurs to me, part of me wants just this night to go on forever, right? But we all need to sleep and eat and all that. And so, how do we make this, kind of an ongoing forum? Is a big question. One of the ways that we do that at Radish is we have regular video conferences, some of which anyone can join. So that's kind of creating sort of like a virtual arcology culture where we have this kind of interaction, but through video conferences, right? One of them, the longest standing one that we have going on is called the Social Club at the End of the World. And Adam and Melissa participate regularly, and we talk about issues pertaining to abrupt climate change and the threat of near-term human extinction, and just look at it from a 50,000-foot level. What do we do about that, right? I would love to see a standing Arcology video conference where people from our group, but who can also invite, as you were saying, Katrina, other people who couldn't be here but would like to be part of the conversation. And so, whether we do it on a once-a-week basis or every couple weeks or once a month, I'd kind of like to take the temperature of the room to see, so I'll ask those 3 questions again. Just raise your hand if you'd like once a week or once every couple weeks or once a month. Not that you're committing to be at every single one of those, heaven forbid, but, if you'd like to pop in from time to time, some of us who are just like gung-ho, like Josh, might be there, every time, and really, bringing in. I'm just speculating. I'm not trying to put you on the spot or anything. This could be like a general Arcology, because Josh's question is a very serious one. How do we actually make this happen, right? Enough talk, right? The decades are going by. Life on Earth is being extinguished. Planet Earth is overheating. Arcologies are a major platform. They're sort of like an intersection of, not dozens, not hundreds, but thousands of different fields and specific topics and disciplines that all come together, right, to form this amazing mega solution, not just for transforming our footprint from net negative, hopefully, to net positive, right, with these linear cities and all this kind of cool stuff being centers for holistic land management, taking care of their entire bioregion, right? But also they become platforms for transforming humanity, right? You go to Jonathan's utopia, budding utopia in Oakland, and it's like you see a whole different form of humanity, right? It's not the unit, I would posit, is not the individual, but the community, right? We're talking about a new organism. Is the individual the ant or the ant colony? Obviously, it's the ant colony. A single ant can't make it. A single leafcutter ant, you've got one of several functions, and without the tribe, we go nowhere. So I kind of see humanity as sort of like, we're kind of like this lost tribe that most of us have just boxed ourselves into this little, you know, self-imposed or culturally imposed isolation tank, right? A misery-generating machine of isolation and fear and all kinds of terrible stuff. So we need to transform, but we need to pull ourselves up from our bootstraps because it's awfully limiting and life extinguishing to live in this way, right? So I see the video conferencing and the collective intelligence as sort of a bridge, right? Think of it as like a bunch of prisoners at Alcatraz passing notes, you know, until finally 4 of them tunnel out of there and get out on a life raft in the middle of the night. We need to tunnel out of our prison, right? And the way that we're going to do it is together, doing this, but on an ongoing basis, right?
What's kind of interesting is our opportunity to bring our science fiction scenarios. You know, arcology is a very well-known term in science fiction. There's quite a number of science fiction novels that just, as a matter of course, use the term arcology. We have amazing, you know, new long-form video, the whole Netflix phenomenon of these incredible productions. I mentioned in the blog post I wrote about this whole subject of Califia, how I met a guy who was the president of one of the major, I forgot if it was Sony or one of the major cable networks. And he cited Paolo in his talk that he gave at a conscious media conference in Los Angeles. And I talked to him after and I said, well, why don't you do a series on, you know, future city concepts? And why don't you use part of the budget for the series to build some prototypes? You know, I was just kind of poking fun at the incredible budgets they have in Hollywood. But anyway, the main point being, these ideas are very inspirational, and I think people are kind of looking to get out of the television fantasy world into the real world and employ these science fiction ideas now in our real reality. And so I think getting the word out, if we could just set our Hollywood machinery to work showing these visions. My show tonight just was a little fractal of what could be developed, showing future living scenarios and bringing to life some of these amazing visionary designs that modern architects are doing, some of which I've shown tonight. So media matters. The outreach to the broader culture, as well as the collective intelligence instruments such as Radish demonstrates. What I was wondering is, let's get a little group discussion here. Let's get away from this top-down talking here. And just wondering what people might think about some dots we can connect to bring some life to, not, you know, maybe this initiative in particular, but just this whole notion of moving forward. Josh is an inspiring example of setting something in motion, reaching out, creating a community, media outreach. Any thoughts?
Well, I have a question for Josh. Who are you? Do you have any partners that you're working with on this? Like, it sounds like you got inspired at Symbiosis. That you're working with folks from that festival or ecosystem community?
Sure.
Or anyone else in particular?
So it's called City. It was catalyzed at an event put on by Symbiosis. However, Symbiosis as an organization is really hard to get a hold of. And so I tried numerous times to get their blessing to use the name City, and then finally someone was like, you realize that they don't have a trademark on the word symbiosis. And City is actually different enough that even if they had a trademark on symbiosis, it's a whole new thing. So I gave up on trying to like make that connection happen. I'm still open to it, but in terms of the branding, that's where that landed. The probably the only organization that's put any real interest in trying to figure out how to work with this from an organizational perspective is Collab Campout, and that's just because I've been working. Collab Campout, much smaller festival group that's putting on a festival outside of Nevada City in April, about 250 people, a small village building experience. Basically, I created a nation builder website, which I mentioned earlier, symbio.city, and there's about 200 or so people that have either subscribed through the website or our Facebook presence to be involved and participate. But in terms of any sort of organizational partners, we haven't really gotten to that stage at this point.
So we don't have any place to go. I mean, we don't have, I mean, you look at all the environmental groups. The commonality between all environmental groups is that they're all independent. They don't work together. And we don't have a place to go to build things together. And trying to get mankind to change is like impossible. So what I see is we build it in virtual reality. And then when shit hits the fan, then instead of saying, well, life's over, well, we say, well, we've got a plan now. We've been working on it. We've put it together. And I say Jamin's Radical Collective Intelligence is doing that. I mean, that's what's happening. We have a website that's for saving the world. Everybody can come together.
It's interesting. When I first started thinking about the development of our project, I've seen the community change in urban leadership. We want to create a center for community change in urban leadership. The sole purpose was to be a bridging organization. Concept I ran into in grad school. You don't need another nonprofit or another anything. What we need is a bridging organization. So we need all the organizations that are doing sustainable living, connected, all the organizations that are doing social justice to be connected. They all need to bridge, and they all need to speak with one voice. Paul Hawken calls the nonprofit world the greatest superpower on planet Earth. It's totally disorganized. If we were to ever speak with one voice, it would be and so what I agree with you is that everyone wants to save the world, but nobody wants to unite. Do it. And
Transition Berkeley is really good at work for our different story of collaborations, ecology centers, stuff, many different groups.
That's the spirit right there.
And that's how we get more people for events, is by partnering.
so what needs to happen is all major nonprofits at some level need to be connected. We need to have leadership at the top of each one of them side. They are going to unite. They're going to speak with one voice. And the idea is that the bridging organization would speak for the entire collective. But at any given moment, if there was a particular issue, say racial justice, that cluster would lead for the whole group. Or at any given moment, it would be sustainable development, that cluster would lead the whole group. But they could always say, we represent 5,000 nonprofit organizations across the country and places. And all of their executive directors, boards would say, yes, they represent us. And yes, we speak for 10 million people. So that's, but right now what ends up happening is some little nonprofit has Sierra Club throws a dinner and 30 people show up. And then we all have a great conversation. We go home and nothing happens.
Well, that really is much of the inspiration from what Paul Hawken did with the Watch of Earth social network, where we had 100,000 nonprofits profiled by trying to bring that community together. That sustained for about 5 years, and they were just dependent on philanthropic support for that. That's the problem with these kinds of things. What's the business model, right? Well, that's part of what I mentioned earlier, working on the Communitas Zone, which taking the energy of the festival culture and the potential community movement to get it started, but incorporating really the whole spectrum of regenerative culture groups. And so it's meant to be a private collaboration network for organizations as well as individuals. And we think that once it gets up and running with the main mission to just create more synergies between these groups and facilitate the kind of interconnections that you're talking about, we think it could also lead to, because of the potential power of these few members representing much larger organizations, so possibility of, we all want to migrate, obviously, off of Facebook, and so it's possible that this kind of proto-network of representatives of organizations could lead to the adoption of a much broader new platform engaging millions, not a couple of thousand, which is what this is talking about, a couple of thousand members. How Communitas Zone, we'll see how it goes, but we're making some progress with it. Obviously, the Gene's working on it. Some others.
How do you think you can bridge the issue that, like, Greenpeace, the Sierra Club, and Campaign to Save the Environment all see the membership as a certain size pool? Now, maybe not in the locals. Like, the locals seem to work together well, but like at the high level, they all see as competing for members to cover their bills, and
funding, funders also.
Same thing, exactly. Yeah, they're competing for the same pool of money, and in my experience, trying to get these organizations like that to work together, there's this weird, like, no, you're not actually competing against each other to see who can save the environment first. But I don't know how to actually broach that. Have you dealt with that?
I got something to say on that. And I want to build up. What's your name again? What Karen was saying, our Earth Guardian, Pachamama Alliance and Greenpeace are actually partnering right now, which I think both of them are very large organizations that can be a leader, showing that collaboration can happen for the same goal. And so, and I think they've also partnered with Amazon Watch, asked to focus on Ecuador and Amazon at large. And they're also working with some very cool players who focus on tribal land. So this might be good for you, Willard, of how there is like a collaborative focus on a very specific project of purchasing a large amount of land in the Amazon so it can't be used for commercial purposes, which is a huge fight in of itself. But I think in having specific projects like that and being a leader in collaboration is huge, because it is weird. Like, you would think, it was kind of like we were talking about at dinner of like all the Democrats racing against each other for president. It's kind of almost the same thing about nonprofits, like fighting against each other for membership, which really boils down to funding, which is the main issue. So it goes back to the young man's question about like, how do we access capital for those who have the energy and motivation to do it, the next generation, to carry it on, and then about the next generations. And so that's really what the conundrum really boils down to. So focusing on collaborations and the power of that.
And you're absolutely right, the nonprofits do have corporate, they actually think that. And we were working with an organization, Urban Strategies, and they were one of our major partners. And we brought the idea of the bridging organization and said, no, you shouldn't do that because of funding. At which point I said, okay, fine, we won't start a new one. Will you make us a sub-project of the Urban Strategies Council? Crickets. But that will kill us. And they need to know that. and I think they do. They don't want to hear it. But two, you need to put together some kind of a shuttle diplomacy program where people go around and just say, look, we're not competing, not inventing anything new. We're just trying to bring everyone together to do what they already do. So you keep going for your funding. We're not after your funding. We're after you. We want, you know, I mean, if Greenpeace and, you know, I don't know, off the top of my head, I can't. If these organizations get together and they speak with one voice, they keep doing their mission. They keep going to their, they keep their membership. But in a sense, we're talking about a kind of confederacy. We're talking about federalism. The bridging organization will have no central power.
You're so right.
Yeah, and so you'll be individual nonprofit nation states, and you'll all be part of a confederacy. And the only purpose of the bridging organization is to coordinate speaking with one voice. But we won't even speak on any given issue. Greenpeace, you speak.
Where's Darian Heyman in this conversation?
I'm sorry?
No kidding.
You know,
He's brilliant.
it was Melinda Kramer and Darian Heyman and myself, and this was before Paul started Wiser Earth, and we were meeting with these philanthropies. We were having meetings. They were saying just this. They were saying, we just wish the different groups would get together and create one good proposal instead of multiple half-baked proposals. Why can't you guys get together? You know, this was the word coming down, and talking back then about the need for just what you're talking about. And maybe some of the major philanthropies can take the lead and help create some kind of a instrument like
those
this.
contacts?
What, the contacts?
Yeah, with those philanthropists.
Well, I mean, it was Darian.
Okay.
And so Darian went on to form the Craigslist Foundation. Right. And they did the nonprofit boot camp, and they did a lot to empower the nonprofit sector. But that same problem remains of the silo syndrome.
It's not just the silo, though, is that everyone wants to go forward with their mission. This is something
we're saving the world. No, we're saving the world.
Right. And this is something the right is actually very good at. Part of my part of my job, I focus on knowing the literature of all the major different ideological perspectives.
Yeah.
And I read the conservative right's literature. So, for example, during the presidential election, the Christian right knew that the election was about one thing and one thing only: support. And the left was worried about Hillary Clinton being involved in this or that, and they wanted to do everything else. Occupy couldn't focus on one message, so it lost its power. You know, it's sort of like, no, stay on message. This is campaigning 101. And the left is lousy at staying on message.
But there is progress. I mean, I've got involved with Elders Climate Action, the Elders Action Network from the Conscious Elders Network.
Elders Action Network?
Elders Action Network is the new name for Conscious Elders Network.
Okay.
And Elders Climate Action is one of their initiatives, following the Citizens Climate Lobby, their model. So we've started, we're actually presenting on this tomorrow, started linking together and mapping. This is using Hulu, and say, okay, what are all these different organizations and how do they connect? And how can we support each other? How do we not get to the point of not everybody on the same script sending out the same series of fundraising letters and getting better and better and filtering out? I'm not going to do it to anybody who's on that cycle. And
that's wonderful.
I saw something over here. So I thought.
This is similar to Wiser Earth. Remember how we used to map like this?
That's right.
With maps, very like it's so on the same page.
Show the relationships.
10 years ago.
I'm also, Jamin and I have been in Cleveland, Ohio, and there's something about the Midwest. It's not like the coast. Like the Office of Sustainability are kind of getting involved with it. They're working on a butterfly corridor, and that's and I've just been thinking about how do we get this butterfly corridor that has no borders. You know, you see this thing traveling the whole length of the United States down to the border to Canada, so that all these pollinators can have a safe corridor, and they're doing it. Like there are states like, I think it's Nebraska, I'm not from my American sorry, but they're like these states that are connecting, that are doing these butterfly corridors that are going to connect. And I was like, this is amazing. Because this is kind of what you guys have been talking about, but they're, you know, it's being done in the Midwest for pollinators. So, you know, can we do this for as humans, with the natural environment, and even do this globally. So we have global commons, and we're connecting those as well.
And what brought us to Ohio was a project where we're lobbying the Catholic Church, first at the level of diocese by diocese within Ohio, but ultimately to lobby Pope Francis to do what you're suggesting, Robert, because he heads the biggest and most, in many ways, most connected and also most, wired to collaborate, wired to follow leadership, right? 1.2 billion Catholics who are trained every Sunday and reinforced to just, do the same kind of thing. I mean, it sounds kind of wacky, but what inspired this, I and Adam and Melissa and Michael and others went on a campaign August and September to try to unite the tech sector in coming together to build this platform that we've been doing on a very small scale, build a platform for collective intelligence so that we can all come together and plug in. And using AI, which can listen to everything we're saying, it's not doing it now, but that's the vision. Listen to everything well, the NSA is a nice proxy. Help us out. I'm looking at the disco ball, kind of like there's, but Hal. But the idea is so we tried to rally the tech sector. I'm ex-Microsoft, was corporate strategy manager there, so I know all the heavyweights there. We went to the center of the Microsoft campus. You were dressed as Obi-Wan Kenobi. I was dressed as Darth Vader, Princess Leia. And I literally serenaded the whole Microsoft campus with amplification, singing Spanish love songs, and had these giant signs illuminated, about abrupt climate change and, help us, Satya Nadella, you're our only hope. And, got everyone's attention. But at an organizational level, they refused to engage. Didn't grant us a single meeting. And so at the end of, weeks of this sustained effort, which is pretty draining, we said, okay, where are we going wrong? Well, could it be that we're targeting the wrong audience? The tech sector is, deeply addicted to this whole money and hoarding and power and isolation and siloing and all that. What about the religious sector?
Well, there is the notion of the religious left, and they have not been as powerful as the religious.
Yeah.
I have a distinction of, I was a Republican when I was younger, and I get to blame on that.
Sure.
But I went to a training in 1983 by a young up-and-coming trainer for the College Republican National Committee, Ralph Reed. And they trained us in Republican tactics that were up-and-coming in the 80s, and that's when I first started talking about this up-and-coming. I left the party a few years later. But the idea is the religious right is extraordinarily organized.
Yeah.
They have training schools, and they put their people everywhere. But you're right. If you could get, like Steve Bannon is mocking the Catholic Church, and if you could get the Catholic Church under the leadership of Francis before he dies and gets replaced by another John Paul, to speak, but then the Catholic Church has its own demons right now that it can't fight.
And see, that's the thing. We've all got our own demons.
Right, I know, I'm aware of that.
Yeah. But anyway, so we're on this radical mission now to get Pope Francis. So here's in a nutshell the plan is that we get Pope Francis to first reach out to Prince Charles, soon to be King of England and therefore head of the Church of England, the first big Protestant organization to give the one finger salute to the Catholic Church, and then invite the Dalai Lama, invite the heads of literally every religion, Muslim, Quaker, you name it, Baha'i, everyone together and form this council, and then do a massive press conference, press release, beginning of a world tour and outreach that basically says, hello world, wake up, right? We're in serious crisis right now. None of your national governments have told you because they're all in bed with the oligarchy and the private sector and all that. But here's the headline that you've all been missing. We're in an existential crisis right now, and either we come together now and sort this out as one united humanity, or bye-bye life on Earth. And, it's been fun or not fun or whatever. Pardon me? human life and all complex.
The other species down.
All complex life. There might be some weird bacteria that survive, you know. You know, but between the nuclear power plants, the destruction of the biosphere, the runaway overheating of planet Earth. That's why I burned out everyone at the Sierra Club with, you know, all these Guy McPherson talks and you know, Mark Jacobson of Stanford and Berkeley profs. We just did this climatic bombardment trying to wake up the Sierra Club and wake up the world. Wasn't too successful. But imagine they do this series of press conferences, dust off the Pope Mobile, change its oil, and get it rolling around the world. You know, basically to rally humanity. But okay, so where do they go to? To a platform for radical collective intelligence. Not necessarily ours. Ours can be, you know, a contribution to it. But again, you know, I wasn't too successful getting my old friend Satya Nadella to wake up, CEO of Microsoft. But imagine he gets a call from Pope Francis. Nobody, minus with very few exceptions, says no to the Pope. Robert, if the Pope called you, would you pick up? Of course you would. Michael,
So,
yeah. There's not a...
the Pope just launched an app that's actually built to do what you're describing.
Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah.
What's it called?
It's called Push to Pray.
Push to Pray.
And every day it's a different thing that the Pope is centering the world's energy to pray about. And it's also like, it's currently like an MVP, but it's built to actually do exactly what you're saying.
Fascinating.
Hey, y'all, I'm just going to do a little peek out because there's a few people in the
So
I'm also very tired.
We're wrapping up.
Can we do the who wants to participate in the video chat before everyone walks out? Never called the question.
Thank you. So let's do that right now. So so you have 3 opportunities to raise your hand. Please raise your hand only once. And then we can break off into private conversations in a moment. But please raise your hand only once. If you prefer it that it be every week, every 2 weeks, or once a month. So please raise your hand for every week on this. Okay. Please raise your hand if you prefer. So that was what? 1, 2, 3, 4. Raise your hand again. Sorry, for once every week. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Please raise your hand for once every 2 weeks. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 for that. Once a month. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. The once a months have it, and now, so if we do this once, but regardless of whether once a month or once every 2 weeks, what day of the week, what time of the day would work for? Pardon me?
Doodle that. Send out a doodle and ask all the possible people to click what they want. And then,
okay, the doodle app. Okay, and who would like to collaborate with us on actually putting this together? We need kind of like, so Josh, and sir, what's your name? Pardon me? Rain. Okay, Rain, Josh, I saw Sai, okay, and Jamin, of course.
So you're going to send out an email list?
Yes, we'll send an email to the email list. This is we've got a steering committee of 3 at the moment. Did I miss anyone who wants to, besides Rain, Josh, and Jamin, and Sai? That's 4 people.
And I'll mention for anybody who wants.
Thank you, Robert. Great to meet you, and thank you so much.
For everybody who wants to relive Michael's talk, the transcript and audio is now posted as a link on his Facebook post for the event, as well as a word cloud.
Oh, nice.
Beautiful.
AI is here to help us if we let it.
Thank you. Thank you, Rain. Rain AI on us. Thank you. All righty.
So you're based out of Washington.
Pardon me?
You live in Washington.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm from the Bay Area, from the East Bay, actually.
Right, I heard the island. I had to look it up.
Hey, Tony, great to see you. Awesome. Yeah. Let's do it. I'm taking it.
I mean, I remember like last time,
Yeah.
you always have
Awesome.
something.
Yeah. Cool. So you're on the email list?
I'm on the email list, and you got me down for that to help with building this stuff and building tools for communities for too long.
Beautiful.
And the one thing I really strongly suggest for this video conference is I know there's a lot of really attractive tools that are video only, but tools like Zoom that allow people to call in or engage on video.
Yeah.
are really, really effective when you're dealing with that work-life balance.
Yeah.
Because I can tune into the phone call while driving home. I really should not tune into the video conference while driving home.
Totally. Oh, that's a great point. See, that's why we need the steering committee or advisory board or whatever you call it, so we can figure all this stuff out collaboratively. I bet you Cy has some great ideas.
Cy has great ideas. Rains has a background in this stuff, and then all of us know Jonathan super well. You know Jonathan, so.
Yeah. Well, yeah, this is a historic meeting.
It's a start meeting. It's a very small world. I discovered that Michael's assistant, or perhaps past assistant, is my ex-girlfriend. Like, tiny.
It is a small world. We're almost like these aliens, concentrated in the Bay Area. Probably a few hundred of us.
No, there's that's the weird part. That's the part that nobody gets. It's actually about 10% of us identify as aliens who don't fit in, between 10 and 30% nationwide. Like, there are literally 100 million of us who think we're all by ourselves.
Oh my goodness.
And until you actually grapple with that fact.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Well, the best way to lead a parade is to find a parade and walk in front of it. This is a parade without a leader, without leadership, right? So let's form that leadership entity being, right? Whether we get Pope Francis to lead it, or whether we just lead it ourselves organically, or leadership, emerges as some anarchistic whatever, right? It becomes a thing and not a person or a group of people or whatever.
Why not?
Anyway, let's figure that out. But it just feels like it's imminent. You know what I mean? It's kind of like
it's very much there. Like, I mean, if you look at what Johann Hari is doing around depression, that feeds into this as well. I don't know whether you've read his book, Reconnecting. There's always 1,000 books, and you try to remember the titles, or like Joanna Macy's the work that coming back to life, or there's a new book called Belonging that's written by a woman from Canada. Like, all of these pieces are coming together in really profound ways. All of the transformational festival movement in the last 6 years, which is sort of a maturation of Burning Man. But then Burning Man never really had a direction to go, so they created this ranch thing. But the ranch isn't about this. Like, there are hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions, in the U.S. who see the same collective vision of how they want to live together and don't have a way to get there. It's amazing how I can go to my hometown that was 70% for Trump. There's Trump flags everywhere. And my neighbor, who I started to talk about, she's like, "Oh, you're a communist," and I'm like, "Not exactly," and blah blah blah. And by the end of it, she's like, "Yeah, I'm on your team," and she gets in her car and it says like, "Lynch Hillary, vote Trump." It's like we're actually all on the same page. We just are so blinded by our divisiveness that we don't even see it.
That's right. Yeah, very well said.
Thanks.
Very well said. Yeah, well, it's this collective intelligence that's going to do it.
That and radical empathy and the ability to learn how to listen. And cable news is teaching us all the opposites on each of those things.
Yeah, there's a great, if Tony's still here, no, Tony just left, but yeah.
Adam's heading out.
Oh my goodness.
Take off.
All right, bro.
All right, man.
Dude, great to see you.
Same here.
All right, well, let's make this happen.
Okay.
Yeah, between all of us. So, anyway, there's this great article. Let me see if I can pull it up.
1 second.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't seen it.
Sure. Yeah. Pardon me? Oh, yeah. They'll take care of all that. I just need to.
Is this yours?
No, that's Michael Gosney.
I'm not they don't they have a fabulous form. They've got millions in grants from God knows where. So they're not like
your enthusiasm.
they started
I
out
wish they
very
had that.
little. Like I try to
Thank you so much for your wildly enthusiastic. It's great.
There are.
Thrilled to have stumbled upon this.
Yeah,
Tonight.
great.
Well, it's biological, right? Because
They have actually tweaked it to the point where they're making
Interesting strategy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're just.
they can incorporate
So
some
many
of it
different
from the.
things.
From
Right. But this is actually
that'd be good. We need that. That's for sure.
we need to really have fuel.
Yes.
Around this topic.
Well, I'm trying to turn that off.
Yes, take
Go
care.
ahead, to say.
Go off.
Yeah.
We must learn to live together as
That's here.
No,
Yeah.
gang.
Brilliant.
Yes, we must. And
Exactly.
Charles
No.
Eisenstein.
Wow.
Well, you know what?
Yeah.
And how can we
Sometimes the
engage
projectors, I
ourselves
think the new one's okay, but
in
they like to cool off.
Yeah.
world that we are all
Brilliant.
locked into?
That's the big
Why
challenge.
can't
That's the $100 trillion
Without-
challenge.
we volunteering every
Thank
you. As it occurred.
We are all part of the 1%.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure you understand that.
Yeah.
But.
Yes.
Jamin,
Yeah.
sorry, do you know how to turn this off?
Oh,
But this is a power button.
So now,
I'm gonna tell you how to press.
how to
Yeah.
Enter standby mode.
Press it twice, maybe.
move it into something that makes
Press
a
twice.
big difference.
No, hit it again.
Because you know, I live here.
Shutting down. Now we're talking.
Privileged.
Shutting down, please wait. I think it needs to.
Yeah.
But the
I'm waiting.
process
I'm
is
not.
started. So that's good.
With that.
I mean, get the rest up. Hey guys.
Yeah.
Let's see. Do you have the clicker and that little thing that's stuck in your USB?
The entry level.
Okay. This is one thing I like about the design.
And in places like my hometown, where it's housing affordable, like you can buy a 300 some little.
Hey, Jamin.
Yes, sir.
One quick question.
Yeah.
Have you figured out
You
when
can
you,
get a house
when
for
you look for your video?
way affordable
Recently,
quickly.
the January 5
But there's
video with
nothing
Guy.
that's smaller than a 3-bedroom house.
If you look for that on YouTube.
And so there's
depending on what the algorithm
single
knows
adults.
about you, you're
Everyone
right
is
company
either
with
married with
Joe
children,
Wadhams
or
and
they
David Suzuki.
where they have an apartment. That's where all the young people
Okay,
are.
I didn't know that.
No,
Yeah,
there is
and
no one
there's a fabulous
that's got children
video,
living at home.
1 hour interview with David Suzuki.
Hmm.
Incredible.
Oh, who does the interview?
No, he is being interviewed by some entrepreneur from Australia.
Okay.
You know who David Suzuki is?
No, I don't actually.
He is a very respected environmentalist and professor of zoology and genetics in Canada.
Okay.
And Peter Wadhams is like a bigwig at Cambridge.
The ice guy.
The ice guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
He is hard to listen to.
Yeah.
But David Suzuki is fabulous.
Gotcha. Good. Great to know.
And what has occurred to me, especially after the experience last spring, when you trot Guy McPherson out, and I mean, he kind of promotes that lone wolf image of himself.
Yeah.
He's not as lonely as if you Google like abrupt climate change.
Yeah.
There are all kinds of people on that.
Yeah.
And he's not as lonely as we make it sound.
Right. Yeah. Well, he's just the most
He's
well known.
He's the most extreme.
Yeah.
I mean,
the
others don't necessarily jump to that extreme a conclusion.
Right.
However, abrupt climate change is a real issue.
Oh,
He's not making that up.
No, I know.
But in a way, some of that gets lost in his extreme conclusion.
Sure. Fair enough. Yeah.
David.
Yes, sir.
Have a good time.
Thank you.
And
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks for bringing it together.
You're welcome. Thank you, Chris.
Rains Cohen.
Yeah.
Who's here?
Yeah.
For one thing, he is an absolute icon way back. I don't know if you Berkeley Macintosh users group called BMUG. He's one of the founders of that. Super influential in the early magazine.
Wow.
And all kinds of stuff. But
yeah.
So what's online right now, linked from my Facebook post about this event, is this is you talking. It's all transcribed by AI, and it's online already.
Oh my goodness.
So my whole talk.
Wow.
It's here.
And Rains volunteered to be part of the.
Yeah.
So we're going to be working with Rains and Sai of Crowdcast or
Crowdcast, yeah.
Crowdcast.
We're
in good company.
Yeah, I recently just started working with Rains on his co-housing organization, doing a lot of stuff.
And that's
traction.
There's a lot going on there.
Yeah, definitely. And hopefully, now that we've got some new blood working on the web stuff, we can build some more traction. It's so easy to sort of find the way it works for you and move forward with that. And then I'm in here going like, what about this? What about this? What about this? So hopefully it'll.
Well, we've got the
things up.
makings of a beautiful partnership and a beautiful global community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. Alrighty.
All right, it was great to be here and get a chance to talk to you. Here you again, Michael.
Good seeing you, buddy. I'm really glad you came. And,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's keep in touch.
Yeah, I'll shoot you an email to fill you in with where I'm at. I was supposed to send you my white paper, and then I think it never got sent because it never got finished. But I'll
All right. Well, I want to support you, man.
All right.
Andre, bro.
Good to see you, Andre.
Thanks for sharing.
So and then we'll just follow up on the details on that. I'll get on you. Well, once again, you got to capture history in the making. Let's go. Right. Ready? Good deal, man. Thank you, Andre. Thank you, brother.
Hey, Jamin.
Yes.
Armando. So
Yeah.
we think he's Armando Davila.
Totally. Yeah. I spoke to Armando today. Yeah.
Armando might be really good.
Great.
I imagine.
It's definitely
If you can remind me to do that, I'll send you.
So it's Armando
Davila, D-A-V. Sure. Vice Chair, Berkeley. Well, they're the ones who got in the city of Berkeley. That's right. Well, yes. Yeah, that's like Armando.
Okay. Friends.
Awesome.
You see? Yeah. Oh, I don't go anywhere without meeting. I was in, trying to think of the craziest. I was in Minnesota, met someone random at a coffee shop, started talking. He's like, oh, let's go on Facebook. Probably we have big friends. We have like 4 friends in common. Basically, like once you figure out like what your life passion is, and you connect to all the people that you can reach out to, like the network effect is real, and we can kind of see with Facebook. I really miss it's not often I talk to people who are old enough to remember Friendster. So you are of the age that Friendster existed, you were aware of it.
Yeah.
Friendster provided these beautiful maps of all of the connections because it was all built around the 6 degrees of separation, the whole model of that. And so you can see who's in your 1st degree, your 2nd degree, your 3rd degree, your 4th degree, your 5th degree. You know, Friendster's pretty MySpace. So 1999 to 2000, maybe 1998 to 2000. And so that was an old system.
Yeah.
There have been analytical tools to see connections on Facebook and LinkedIn. They keep breaking them every time they update the API, so I can't tell you whether you're going to work right now. But that's visualizing those connections that you're interested in. Happy to let you know what's out there. I've done the work before, so once you've done the Googling once, it's pretty quick to figure out what still works instead.
Yeah.
At the festival, or just to go see the?
Yeah.
Well, the amazing thing for me was with the festival is there was And Michael, do you know how many people were supposedly actually there? I've heard numbers from like 20,000 to 90,000.
I was like 25.
Okay, so
not 90.
Every number is all over the map.
We were in Madras.
We were in we were outside of Pineville, which is a very small town, not too far from Bend, about an hour from Bend. And yeah, so there was somewhere maybe 25,000 people there, but they had only started really building this. It was an instant city. Like it's sort of like Burning Man.
Yeah.
Sort of like Burning Man, but a lot of the facilities came from it. So there was, stores and restaurants and the best porta potties I've seen in a festival, which isn't saying a whole lot. But basically, and there was all this waterways because in order for them to be allowed to set the party up, they had to create a river that they could use for putting a helicopter down and getting the water out to put the fire out in case of fire happened. Because you're going to put 20,000 people in the middle of nowhere, you want nearby water to put out the fire. So they had to build this. They dig 2 new wells and created this river. Other than the wells in the river, everything was constructed in 18 months. So I'm looking at this instant town, this town that's really like, I'm doing it wrong. Why am I trying to fix San Francisco? For the last decade, it just gets worse and worse. It's capital, like erodes everything. Let's just start from scratch. And then like 6 hours later, I'm at my talk on creating an intentional community. It was just like,
I'm going to break down the projector. Good over here.
Cool. I need to head back to San Francisco to sleep and get hit on the road to drive for Lyft.
Thanks all for watching.
So